Bongeda. Bongeda. Squeaky desk chair don't feel that good. Squeaky chair don't feel so good. Squeaky desk chair don't feel so good. I think I got a squeaky desk chair. A squeaky desk chair don't feel so good. Squeaky desk chair don't feel so good. I think my squeaky desk chair don't feel so good. Oh! I thought it would. Greetings, runners. Let's get this thing started. We got a whole heap of chunk of stuff to get through right now. We are going to go Cyberpunk. Greetings, programs. It's your buddy Ingrid Bernal here, rolling up Cyberpunk style. How y'all doing? Just a little leftover from Samhain, from the Halloween days. Just messing with you. Look, it's just me under here. It's just me. There's nothing to be scared of. What up? We're live. We're gonna thrive. There's so much to talk about tonight. It's huge. Now, yes, I'm guilty of overthinking. Yo, Hunter, thanks. I owe you one. Boop. There's been so much going on, and hey, from the UK, I know it's super late there. I'm modding up the times going online every once in a while, but most importantly, I just wanted to come online and get this big old grocery list done. Now, you guys may have noticed I've been a little bit sneaky pants off the internet lately. There's a whole bunch of stuff been going on. As I'm sure for all of you, October is a huge month. So doing all kinds of things, still right in it like the kind of DeGwinnett. I'm hanging in the Poconos like everybody knows, but not so much on YouTube. And that's the first thing that I want to talk about tonight. So I hope everybody's got a delicious beverage and a comfy chair. You kick back with your newest RPG purchase. You're kicking it. Maybe you got a new novel that you're about to crack into for a lively Saturday night of pure nerdism. And you're tuning into old Runehammer. Thank you guys for tuning in. Let's jump into what I wanted to talk about right off the bat. So that is me. Sometimes I'm hanging out on YouTube. Sometimes I'm not hanging out on YouTube. Tonight I'm kind of just feeling like hanging out on YouTube. So here I am. Mainly because, work comes in these waves, right? And so when some of the projects kind of settle for a second, you're like, woo, you look around, you're like, I need to say hi to my peeps. So here I am. But also, I don't know if you guys have noticed lately, but the times they are a-changing. And I'm not talking about the Watchmen. I'm talking about YouTube itself, and particularly RPG YouTube. Welcome everybody showing up. RPG YouTube is definitely starting to change and grow, and it's absolutely fantastic and amazing. But at the same time, for at least the style that I want to be on YouTube, it makes things a lot more challenging to see so many smart people bringing so much heat on the internet. And so I wanted to point out 3 of my favorite YouTube creators that maybe you guys know about, maybe you don't, maybe you gals know about, maybe you don't. That I wanted to point them out because in a lot of cases, I just like breeze through a lot of topics, and I honestly do not do like substantive, meaningful reviews of things. Let's just face it. I kind of just blast through stuff. I have like this opinion about that thing, and I just rip on, and I'm just kind of cruising, right? And so I wanted to point out these 3 creators because the depth and the thoroughness and the energy and the moxie that they're putting into their channels is, to me, hella dope. There's really no other way to put it. So I wanted to just throw these out, and as some of you might be guessing, the very first one that I'm so excited lately is about Dungeon Craft. Now, this is my man over here. This is Professor DM. Now, I first kind of caught wind of him because of his terrain system, which is the Spotlight system, which basically has become my brain. I think it's really the only true innovation in terrain that I've maybe ever seen since the days of just ever. It's crazy. It's beautiful. You've got to watch his video. Yeah, a lot of his concepts, 3 NPCs is great. He takes very large amounts of things and gets them into very actionable tiny blobs that are bloody brilly. The guy is great. And you also, just openly is angry at his children on his videos, which I love that part. So go to this YouTube video, Dungeon Craft. Once the stream is over tonight, I'll throw the links to everything I'm mentioning here down in the the doodly-doo. That's what Colville calls it. But you got to check this guy out. To me, the other reason I wanted to send you guys over to Professor DM is, in a lot of ways, I feel that he is doing what I considered the God's work of the design crushing of our hobby. He is doing it, kind of picking up in some ways where I left off, but totally doing his own style and giving me a bunch of sort of rest, honestly. I feel like I can completely lean back from a lot of the stuff that I was doing because he has not only taken it in his running, but I feel he's more thorough and a little bit more innovative than I have been. And so that's about the biggest endorsement I can give. So go check him out. It's pretty cool. It's pretty darn cool. As Miley Cyrus would say, it's pretty cool. All right, so go check him out. All right, that's Professor DM on Dungeon Craft. You definitely want to go hang with that dude. So you got like an open Sunday afternoon. You don't want to move because you're hungover and you just want to watch YouTube. He's your man. All right, so next up, what do we got here? Oh, I got two others. Today we're going to be talking about a lot of Cyberpunk RPGs. Now, obviously, it's not going to be an exhaustive list because I am only one mortal man. But one of the ones, obviously, that's on a lot of people's sort of a feed nowadays is Cyberpunk Red, and I'm going to mention it in brief. But really quickly, I wanted to throw out respect and send some of you guys over to this gentleman right here. This is my man. This is my man Seth Skorkowsky right here. He is an author as well as a brilliant YouTuber, and he throws down legit levels of work on his videos, and also he's just thorough with how much data you're actually getting. So if, let's say, you're considering buying some shit, or maybe you want to dare to challenge your players to get into some kind of a more fringy RPGs because you've been DMing D&D for 374 years. He's really good at breaking down details on games. This is just his a thumbnail from his Cyberpunk Red review, which is really thorough. I'm not going to be thorough like that tonight. I just tend to, drink more than him and just kind of not put in all the hard work that he does. So his channel's amazing. He's smart. He's detailed, and I can't tell you enough how, as a hobbyist, this is my man right here. I really speak his language, and he just works the details. And like, I tend to get really critical of everything, and I'll be like, this isn't my favorite thing. This isn't the birthday cake I dreamed of. I want my birthday cake. That's kind of my general tone. But he sees a lot more of the good and the beauty in things and just lets it be. And I think it's freaking beautiful. So go check out Seth Skorkowsky. He's like got a really sort of straight up kind of style. So I think that's just the name of his YouTube channel. It doesn't have like a fancy name. It's just like, hi, I'm Seth Skorkowsky. I love that style. It's just like, just straight the hell up. Okay, so that's my man right there. Now the third one I want to hit you with, probably a lot of you know about, but he's a little bit, I think, parallel to me in some ways as well, in that he's got some sort of slower subscription growth. And I think that's because he doesn't just sort of do really just sort of, a popularity type rhythm. He has a somewhat irregular rhythm to his videos and also an irregular creative rhythm. So he's done audio stories, he's done adventure designs, he's done reviews, he does like sort of top 10 lists. His kind of creativity is all over the map, which I love in a creator. And so I don't think he's like one of these huge like mega blow-up-y channels, but he's always had a special place in my heart as the kind of love that only one man can have for another. And this is also specifically relevant because of his latest video, which kind of is going to come up here a little bit in my discussion of the Cyberpunk RPGs tonight. He dropped this video, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, about all of the sort of flaws in D&D 5th edition, and it's a great video. This is my man, ESPER the Bard. A lot of you guys may know about this guy, but he's got a really fair approach and also doesn't smite you with his mug during his videos. He does like lots of graphic sort of overlays and crisscrossing and all kinds of brilliant stuff. Puts in the work and clearly has the orator skills to break it down in a really fun way. So I love this new video that he did, which is basically all of the sort of odds and ends and foibles of 5e, because he also comes at it joking like 5e is the greatest role-playing game ever to land on the planet, you know, which is kind of the sort of Hasbro approach to promoting D&D lately. Like, all of the celebrities will join the cult of D&D and we will be all powerful, you know, classic megacorp type stuff. And he kind of starts with that joke and then breaks it down with the details of someone who's clearly been at the table a lot and sort of has that nuts and boltsy kind of knowledge that I really appreciate. I love that stuff. I do think that the age of D&D popularity can make some of this stuff sort of get washy or unclear. And he's really, really good at it and keeping a smile on his face and still being really light with it. So it's not like a brutal critique, like some evil shit that I would do when I've had too much to drink on Sunday night. And I'm just like, you know, he's not like that. No, this is my man, Esper the Bard. Check him out. Go sub to that channel and you will not be disappointed. You'll be happy. You'll be happier than you are right now, if that's even conceivable. Okay. Yeah, so a lot of you guys probably know what's up with those channels, but go there if you haven't checked them out. At least give their couple of videos a chance because these guys are dope as fuck. All right. Whew. Okay, so got that done. Now I'm going to move into the next item on my grocery list. Grocery list is a term that I use that just means like I need to just do a bunch of shit. So I'm just going to make it in a list and just do it. There's no unifying theme or comical punchline here. Just using YouTube purely as a personal transmission system. So I'm just sending my transmission out to you guys. Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, all 50 of you crazy knuckleheads. Good to have you guys on Saturday night. It's kind of the come down from Halloween, at least where we're at. And we kind of, we work a little bit in the bar industry here and there in our household. And so when Halloween comes around, like we're dressing up like 3-4 times and like it's just like a lot of partying. So, whew, that's over. So that's why Saturday night is wide open right now and just kind of chilling on YouTube. So glad y'all are up here with me. Next one is just a straight up brutal ass plug. I'm just going to plug myself. I never do this. And recently some people in my life have pointed out how terrible I am at this. So I just decided to go ahead and do it. Check these out. I've just finally shipped my freaking audiobooks. It only took 5 damn years. 5 freaking years. So if you go on Audible and just search Runehammer, you'll get my Alfheim trilogy is now on Audible. It is read by the brilliantly talented Mason Hunter. I am not up to this challenge. I tried it and it is far more difficult than I imagined. What's up, Adrian? But they're finally available. Unfortunately, you can't control a lot of the pricing on Audible, so y'all got to shell out either your monthly credits on Audible or a few ducats to get my audiobooks. But the span of time from writing these novels, getting them read and produced, then doing all the sound design and all the music myself, getting it all to work and publishing it to Audible, 5 freaking years. 5 damn years, I tell you. So please jump over and thank you to everybody who's already grabbed them and who's been listening. And get yourself some audiobooks, all right? I'm really proud of them. I'm not sure how else to say it because I'm not good at promoting myself like this. It feels insanely awkward. It's very weird. But a lot of love and a lot of time went into those books. And I actually met a lot of great people in my life because of those books. So I'm really proud of them. And there we go. Yeah, Rhinox. That's exactly where I'm at, dude. It's exactly where I'm at. I mean, look at me. I look weird. I look weird. I got my Mass Effect hoodie on, and I'm just like, help me. Too much party. Like, one eye is like bigger than the other or hotter than the other one. Like, feel funny. It's getting warm in here. Polyester. Must be the polyester. Anyway, wow, that got weird. Sorry. Okay, so what are we actually here for? Thank you all 60 of you for tuning in. Hello, everybody. We're on the post-Halloween sugar crash, but we are not here to talk about all this grocery list garbage. No. We are here to talk about Cyberpunk. All right, now in my first video, which was like Cyberpunk sources or source material, I broke down my favorite Cyberpunk source material out there and tried to sort of develop a little bit of a thesis about, a different look at it. Now, the more that I've gone deeper and deeper into this research, which, by the way, has kind of been my main line of RPGs with minor fantasy digressions over the years. So this sort of cyberpunk research has been going on forever, and like going back through my sort of catalog and my drive-through library and, re-downloading and stuff like that. It's kind of like, whoa, man, I read a lot of this stuff. But there is an overall thing that I'm noticing, and that's kind of what I want to talk about. Okay, so I'm going to go down when I have about a dozen of these, which really are games that I can recommend. So even if I'm like breaking them down and being all mean about the design or the artwork or exactly how innovative they treat the genre or whatever, I'm not putting these games in this video because I think you shouldn't get them. If you've got the ducats to throw down on a nice little compact cyberpunk library, these are good ones. You're going to be happy with it. And then, of course, there's always the systems that are out there that have nothing to do with cyberpunk that unfortunately just makes too long of a list, that also can add to your sort of cyberpunk library. So we're going to get all of that. But basically, here's my list. That's not a drum roll. That was a drum solo. What the fuck? Okay, this is my list of cyberpunk RPGs that are worth a damn. So if you're either thinking about creating a cyberpunk RPG or running one or getting into the sort of cyberpunk mindset, which it's definitely a mindset. There's a lot to this. And I think it's just a sort of an interest. It's like, oh, yeah. So you're, reading Neuromancer for the first time, Andrew. That is so dope. Welcome. So you can see how there's sort of a taste or a kind of a lifestyle feeling to cyberpunk. It's like a way of being in a way. Just like sort of being a real hardcore fantasy fan. It's kind of like a way of being. You got your elf ears and you show up with your hobbit cloak on when you go over to your friend's house and stuff like that, right? So anyway, here's my breakdown. Cyberpunk RPGs that are worth a damn. And do not interpret the order on these ones. This is in no particular order, okay? So we're going to start off with sort of the hot muffin of the week. Now, it's been out for a little while, but it's definitely killing it. Now, Cyberpunk Red is interesting because it is worked on by R. Talsorian as well as Project Red. So this is a pretty powerful team up of creative people. R. Talsorian are the guys who did Cyberpunk 2020 way back in the early 80s. And so really are the originators of Cyberpunk RPGs. But I have to say, do not buy Cyberpunk 2020 or Night City or the Night City Weapons Guide or whatever. Like, they are originators, but those books are so old they're quite uncomfortable to read. So sorry about that critique, guys, but there it is. So fast forward almost 40 years and you've got Cyberpunk Red. We got a team up between the kind of the originators of this stuff and the video game company that is creating 2077, which is coming out next year. I think that's generating a lot of interest in the genre. Honestly, I would be amazed if a video game can capture the sort of nuance of what I perceive to be the best cyberpunk stuff, which is stuff like Blade Runner. But that's an entirely different question. Video games in general have done a sort of slightly more interesting job with this genre than tabletop games have. And this is going to be a trend you're going to start hearing me critique. So anyways, Red, you can get this sort of Jumpstart kit, which is not free. I think they're calling it Jumpstart because it isn't the full thing. They also have a world book that you get. The mechanic in here is like a 1d10 mechanic. It's kind of, to me, I can't imagine spending a whole night just rolling a 1d10. That just makes me freaking sad right there. I can't deal with that. I do think that they have some fun ideas in here, but I also have to be like, hey, I think it's informative to look at, but the layout in this book has this this color red that is not red. It's like this pinkish color, and it's everywhere in huge blocks. And it's really quite uncomfortable to look at. And then also, this may be something that you guys like, but it really takes this premise of style over substance, which is a sort of a saying that Cyberpunk 2020 really kind of is underpinned by, which kind of means like, it doesn't matter if you're kind of a little punk ass biatch, as long as you do it with style and flair, you're cool and stuff, and that's Cyberpunk. And to me, that's just like mega thumbs down. Also, they kind of talk about how the 80s is so integral to Cyberpunk, and I see that as kind of silly, honestly. there's very little that was futuristic about the 80s. The 80s have not proven to have a time-proven sense of futurism. I would say that actually the late 20s and early 30s and the Art Deco period were far more cyberpunk than anything that occurred in the 80s. But hey, you know, that's their kind of style. They definitely contributed to the kind of pink mohawk machine gun kind of genre. And so these contributions are not small. And this is their latest kind of update of their world. And so it isn't for me, I would say, but I would still say it's kind of a form of required reading because these guys are kind of the originators and they deserve that respect. And so is this book something I like? Not really. I definitely don't like the art that much. I don't like that color red everywhere, and it just feels a little hasty, like maybe it was put together a little hasty. I can't imagine that the video game company is having a very good influence on things. It just doesn't. Yeah, but if you want to kind of get the lowdown skinny on some of the guys and girls who really invented what we're talking about, it's a must get. Okay, so that's Cyberpunk Red. And again, if you want a real review, go over to Seth Skorkowsky's channel, and he gives it a real review, and he sees a lot more joy in it, and gives it a lot more respect. So, yeah, he's legit. Can anybody hear me? Check this out. Boom. There we go. It's probably going to be better. I am the worst at using the internet. Okay, anyway. So that's Red. Check it out. Whatever. It's best-selling right now, and so that's got to mean something, right? Okay. Whew. It's getting hot in here, so take off all your clothes. It's getting so hot, make you take your clothes off. All right. Yeah, and I'm really straining not to mention any Cyberpunk video games because there's a lot of them. A lot of them are brilliant, but that's what I'm not here to talk about video games. So there we go. All right, next up, we've got one of my all-time favorites. Now, this one, I really can't say negative things about. This was one of the first books that really, this was a hugely formative book for me as a designer, as a game player, as a hobbyist, as a map maker. This book was huge for me. Now, Gurps has some foibles with the sort of the overly long lists of advantages and stuff like this. And some of their mechanics in the core of Gurps are a little bit, you know, outdated. Remember, we are talking about stuff that's being built in the 80s. And even though the 80s are cool and, you know, like nostalgia is cool, it's getting so soft, make you take your gear off. Anyway, nostalgia does have a limit. And so when you go back, we have come a long, long way as a hobby, and that is awesome to see. But it does mean that some of these old 80s books, even though they're really cool, they feel a little crunchy from, you know, modern standards. And that's okay. That does not reduce their value to the overall genre. So Cyberpunk Gurps, to me, was just sort of amazing. It helped introduce this whole thing to me in a way that made it mine. It's when I truly became like a game designer, I think, this was a big part of it. Was the Gurps generic book, the main basic book, and then this book put together. That was how I built my very first game, which was called Living Weapon. And it was kind of actually very similar to another game we're going to talk about here in a little while, which is really weird long throw boomerang that has just returned. But remember, a lot of these games, too, you don't need to throw down a bunch of cash. Just get the PDF so you can read the PDF in a couple of nights or in 3 nights and get this toolbox so that you're sort of doing your homework on the genre and on the RPGs that have been designed around the genre. This is going to help you either make your game or run your game better. It's just going to give you that bigger mind space. But amazing. This book is amazing. As you guys know, like Gurps has about 378 million books on everything imaginable, but really this is one of my all-time favorites. Props out to Steve Jackson. What up, dude? All right. So next up, we have fast forward way into the future, way into the right now, actually. And we come to our next one. It's getting so hot, make you take your optics off. I think I'm a little... There we go. Let's just chill that out a little bit. Okay. There we go. That's a little more better. That's a little more like it. I don't want to like, you know, yell or anything. I don't want to see that red color. Okay, there we go. That's better. All right. So next up, we fast forward into right fricking now. So this last game just came out of Kickstarter and plopped into Drive-Thru RPG. I'm really lately not a fan of Kickstarter. It really seems like the art of selling videos rather than products, and like kind of like when things going to get done. And I've been burned too many times on Kickstarter waiting 2 years or more for something to get done, and by then it's just like, why? So I'd rather really see it done and then get it. But that's just me, no big deal. Anyways, this one came off of Kickstarter, so it got done and hit the shelf, and so I grabbed it right away. And this is Carbon 2185. This is Cyberpunk for D&D 5e. So it's right off the gate. It's a little weird they call this the core rulebook, because really isn't 5e the core rulebook? I don't know. Anyway, so it's 5e, but it's Cyberpunk. Now, like the last two that we just mentioned, Red and Gurps, this book suffers from a problem that plagues the genre in general, actually, which is that people treat the cyberpunk genre in this sort of obvious kind of phoned in kind of way. Like, okay, we're doing a cyberpunk book, so I guess we need this, and this, and this. And here's all the stuff that you're supposed to have in it. And they almost accidentally wind up creating the same damn book. Like, it's quite strange, actually. And sorry to Robert Merritt or Dragon Turtle Games, but this one suffers from that quite a bit. And also, the maximalism in this book it makes me crazy. It makes me want to go to sleep, honestly. So that is a big topic that I want to talk about going forward here. Maximalism. It's driving me nuts as an overall publisher habit. It's like, well, we better make sure we put all the stuff in this game. And you get all this stuff, and by the end, you're so numb. And also, you're not quite sure even what their focus was, because they made sure there were 20 pages of this and 20 pages of that. And yes, just like arrows, slashes, and fireballs, I really liked the cover on this book. But then you get inside, and it is a mishmash of artists where I don't know even what their art design was. And some of it is from Tithi Luadtong on Shutterstock, and then it goes all the way over to this like pen and ink style, and then there's like a painty style, and then there's like a cheerful style, and then there's like and I'm just like, what is this trying to be? And honestly, I don't know. I don't know what it's trying to be. It just made me very tired trying to get through this, and it's partially because the reason I mentioned ESPER's video about the problems with 5e is like, I've become so weary of seeing 5e material that it makes me weary to even start reading it. So one of the things that 5e really suffers from is that to describe an action, like a feat or skill or something, it always is this certain type of text that's very specific. And I think it basically originates from this is possible to be used in organized play kind of thing. So we have to use this very specific thing, even though they're just describing like, stab the guy. It's always in this overly long text, and it starts making me crazy. Now, a lot of these books have trouble with art direction. For some reason, Cyberpunk sends art directors, if they even have one, into a tailspin. I think it's because it's this really big world, and someone tells them at some point that they're supposed to make it big, and they forget to focus on a small part of it, to something you can feel, something you can understand. And they just wind up wanting to show you all these cities and all these continents, and here's the history of the entire Earth, and then here's 400 more years of information, and here's all this. It's just complete overload. It's maximalism. And this maximal approach to me, it just drives me crazy. Now, all that said, this is sort of one of the latest offerings that is out there. I think it's honestly priced a little steep, but if you're doing the research, remember, this is still worth your time. This is a research mindset. And so the researcher can't necessarily just be looking for their favorite book. It's more like what's being done right now is the mindset. And so I still think, this is an interesting case in what's being done right now, but between the sort of overblownness of it, the too many things, and the art direction being all over the planet, it's just like, whoa. All right. Now, next up, and now we're going to go flying way back into time again. Here now is a true timeless classic that I can absolutely tell you, no matter what it costs you, get a hard copy of this book. This book, to me, defined it much greater than really almost any other RPG. And I know it's weird because it has elves and dwarves and it has a little bit of fantasy elements in it. You know, there's like dragon crime lords and stuff. But to be honest, that's a really useful element to bring into Cyberpunk because it's something. It's an idea. You really don't want Cyberpunk to just be Earth. Here's everything on Earth, only 10 times bigger because it's the future with 10 times as many people and 10 times as many advertisements and 10 times as many soft drinks. That to me is not an idea. That's just maximal list making. Shadowrun is pretty compact. The book is compact. The idea is compact. The setting, the amount of sort of space that they introduce you to is compact. The feeling is unique. It's blinking brilliant. Also, and this is the biggest reason that you have to have this in your library, whether you're interested in Cyberpunk or not, no game, including any version of Shadowrun since, they're now on their 6th edition, no version of any game has ever nailed dice pooling as well as Shadowrun 2nd edition. Dice pooling is so well executed in this book and is so integral to the feeling of the setting and what it does to the scenes in your games. It has never been touched. It's about like how D100 was absolutely quintessentially nailed by Call of Cthulhu all the way to 7th edition. The concept of gaining, spending, losing, and using dice in piles is nailed to the wall in Shadowrun 2nd edition. It's just, they slay it. Now, every once in a while, yeah, you're going to get some wacky, 23d6 rolls. That is true. But most of the time, it's much more controlled. You're working with more like, 4 to 10 dice, which is really fun and can create a very explosive feel to the game, which I think has never been matched in its ability to capture what's going on in Cyberpunk. And this is really an interesting part of the overall RPG discussion, which is, what is going on? Well, there's a lot of high-tech stuff going on. And it's to a point where, like, the tech is surprising at times. And this dice pool mechanic that they used can be surprising, and it fits. It just freaking fits. So if you're making any kind of Cyberpunk RPG, you at least need part of your dice mechanics to include dice pooling. It has become so intricately associated with Cyberpunk because of Shadowrun 2nd edition. There's just no going back. It's just too damn good. I also liked this one because I felt like they didn't short circuit things as far as how far things are into the future. It feels a little better. I still think they came up short, but I find it silly that like it's 2023 and there are flying cars. I can't stand that. And Blade Runner is one of the worst offenders on this stuff. But I feel like for Cyberpunk to be what this genre needs to be, it needs to be at least 2400. I mean, we're so far away from any of this crap. Thank God, because this is a doomed world in a lot of ways. It's not going to be 5 years from now, guys. Okay, anyway, there you go. Shadowrun 2nd edition. Absolutely get that shit. Very simple way of like, I have this ranking, so I got this many dice, ploppity ploop, I put 3 on top, boom, my obstacle, I'm rolling damage, it's a ton because I'm spraying a bunch of rounds out of my Uzi. Hell yeah. And, if you don't have an Uzi or some kind of Uzi in your game, it's not Cyberpunk. And this one's on the cover. This guy's got an Uzi right there. All right. Now, next one is one that I know less about, but that, just from giving it a pretty quick look over, is Interphase Zero. Now, these guys are a little bit interesting because they have like 4 different versions that are built out to different systems. So they have Savage Worlds, they have Pathfinder, and they have Modern D20, and Fate, actually. So they might even have more than that, but those are the ones that I'm familiar with. But still, I felt that this succumbed to the exact same troubles that are plaguing some of these other books. It's a bit maximal, and it's also a bit like you're kind of nodding in a strange way going, yeah, that's the cyberpunk stuff, all right, okay. Yeah, okay, that's cyberpunk stuff. Like, it's just, okay, yeah, there's a city street with like 1 million Japanese signs and like, yeah, you're kind of wanting. Now, Interphase Zero has a little more sci-fi to it, which is kind of cool. They do have some really neat art, but then also they tumble a little bit on how this art sort of fits together and exactly how human it is, and it gets a little, it's tough. And so This one I know a little less about, but I'm working my way through it, and it is well made. It is thoroughly crafted. But overall, I found myself kind of going, you know what I mean, on the pages, because I kind of wanted to get to the end. I'm getting a little bit of like deja vu reading these cyberpunk books. Like, why isn't anyone sort of stretching it a little bit? Why is it just like, here's a guy walking down a street with Japanese signs and he's got weird goggles and like, it's raining and like, okay, and just, I don't know. I need to push it a little bit. And when I'm done going through my list here, I want to talk about some of those elements about what can happen. So I guess that's the sort of the thesis at the end of this monster book. The reason nobody really wants a flying car, even when they work, is what happens when they start working. Yeah, it's 3 times the world. Yeah. So I hear all you guys' your comments, and thanks for participating. I agree with almost everything being said out here. I disagree that 2077 is far enough into the future. I do not think we're going to have megacities by 2077. I don't think that's going to happen at all. There's still going to be little towns like Castle Rock, Maine, in 2077. I don't think we're going to have, I mean, you can barely build, you know, how many more skyscrapers in 50 years? Like, not that many. I mean, look at even just this picture for Interphase Zero. Like, we don't have anything that's even remotely to that level. Okay, anyway. And yeah, these guys seem to keep on building and keep revising their system and stuff. And I think their next one is about to come out, as Matt Stark points out. But still, all part of this canon that seems like some of the better made cyberpunk out there. And this is the one that I'm sort of in the process of absorbing right now. Okay, next one is one I think that already got mentioned up here in the comments, which is Eclipse Phase. Now, Eclipse Phase is a very interesting argument, almost against me in a way, because again, you have this maximalism. This is a 400-page book. It's a colossus, and it's a tiny-ass font. It's like freaking 6-point font. Like, it's ridiculous. I don't know where the editors are on these projects, but they just like put in everything they write. These people are crazy. A lot of the writing actually in Eclipse Phase is really freaking good, which is amazing and surprising. Their whole thing about the sort of shells and how those work, and their overall sort of transhuman vibe, their sci-fi vibe, their outer spacey kind of feel to everything is really actually dope. It's just hard to read because it's so dense. Like, for every 5 paragraphs, they probably needed 1. But Eclipse Phase is really, really awesome. And there's a couple reasons. One, the art direction holds really tight. They have a style that isn't over-realized. Now, for some reason, Cyberpunk causes this in the art that they gather. They get this overly detailed art. It's like it's trying to look real or something. And what it does is it winds up giving you nothing to imagine. But in Eclipse Phase, they've got this much more chunky kind of look, which actually reminds me of some of the Free League kind of stuff that they do. It's this kind of chunky look. I still think Symbaroum is one of the best fantasy books ever made because it kind of leaves a lot to the imagination in a way. It's brilliant, and Eclipse Phase does that. It also holds consistent through the entire book. So whatever artists did this, I don't just have a list off the top of my head. I'm not that thorough. They held it together, and that art direction is really tight. The overall layout of the book, too, even though it's a little silly with some of the boxes and colors on colors, I don't really like reading text on colors and all this crazy stuff. But it does hold, and it's consistent. Eclipse Phase is really cool to me because the quality of the writing is just freaking there. So it's a colossus of a book. I really am grumpy about maximalism. So if you had the quality of the Eclipse Phase writing and art and it had been crushed down into a 120-page book rather than 400, I think they would have a classic on their hands. It would be super dope. One thing about Eclipse Phase, you do have the D100 roll under, just like Call of Cthulhu, which is really proven and tried and true. A lot of people play it, but it's just fundamentally counterintuitive to me in a way, and just is a little like, yay, I got a low roll. I'll just never be happy about that. So that isn't necessarily a critique against the book as a cyberpunk researcher. And this one's a little more than cyberpunk. This goes into sci-fi land. And so that's part of it. And that might be something you want to get into. But it expands upon flexible consciousness, flexible skins or the shells that you occupy, the strangeness that can result, a digital world. I liked it too because they do talk about, some of the hacking kind of stuff, But a lot of these cyberpunk books, the ones that I've mentioned, they get way too occupied with what happens in VR. I don't know why this is a fetish of cyberpunk. I'll never understand it. It's like, here's an entirely separate game while the hacker is formulating himself into a holographic samurai to cut through an imaginary security node that... Freaking why? Like, it's cooler to have a guy like in the new Blade Runner movie where he's like turning dials to look through old microfiche files. That is cooler than anything VR-y, or like, I have a VR thing and I'm like, no, it's cool to have big weird goggles on that you're like seeing through buildings and stuff. But to be in like virtual land, like grabbing imaginary spheres and putting them in holes like you're playing freaking Xbox Connect or some shit is not cool. It just isn't. The idea of over visualizing computer systems is so not futuristic. It is completely not panned out. It's silly. It's a waste of time and body energy. And it's just goofy. And we're going to get to that, Rhinox. So you got to hang with me. Because that limitation feel is what we got to crack. Because I do not believe that is intrinsic in the genre. I think that is a shortcoming of this genre getting phoned in by a lot of creators. And I'm not sure why that happens. But I do think it happens. It's like Cyberpunk. Oh, I know exactly what needs to be in this. Let's do all the normal stuff. And I think a lot of these fall victim to that. Now, we've got a couple that don't. And Shadowrun is one of them that didn't do that. Yeah, that virtual stuff. Just no. And especially if you're trying to portray it as futuristic, Lawnmower Man is not futuristic. It is a completely hokey and debunked view of what computer systems are going to be like. And it's not cool. All right. Finally, now here is my big dark horse, the Mutants of X. Now, first of all, the artist that did Mutants of X is named Skull Fungus. If you don't know about Skull Fungus, you don't know nothing. You got to get down with Skull Fungus. Go follow him on Instagram or whatever. Just find him in your sphere of the world, wherever, Twitter, whatever you do, and behold, because this guy is brilliant. Brilliant, I say. Now, Mutants of X is a super compact little book. I think it's like 40 pages or something. And like I said, look, you see brass knuckles, you've got a grenade and a Uzi and stuff on the cover. It's practically cyberpunk. Now, I think it'd be a stretch to call this true, like, core cyberpunk, but it's a weird, I'm not even exactly sure what this is. It's very weird. It's definitely not like zombie. It's definitely not quite cyberpunk, but it is kind of cyberpunky in a way. But the beauty of Mutants of X is that it keeps it short and tight and leaves a bunch of questions to you, the player, the GM, and the creator, and just gives you a mindset for playing in this world with guns and grenades and stuff like that, which is a big part of solving the overall cyberpunk problem, right? But there is no way for me to endorse Mutants of X strongly enough. It's a lot like Shadowrun in that way. This belongs in your library. This is such a dope little creation. And it also just relaxes a bit. Instead of like, okay, we're doing cyberpunk, so we're going to need some photorealistic concept art. No, you don't have to do that. You can have fun with it. You can do an ink style, and it's super cool. The mechanics in this thing are so clean and fun and easy to write. Yes, I'm in my Mass Effect uniform. That is true. I'm on, see? Where is it? Yes, see? Okay. Mutants of X. Check it out. Check out Skull Fungus. I love this one. Now, this comes to my real thesis here. Mutants of X is not maximal. Everything else besides Shadowrun I have mentioned has this annoying maximal effect. Like, I mean, thank God in fantasy worlds it's usually only one continent. But a lot of these books feel obliged to tell me about multiple frickin' planets of data. And I just can't. It's ridiculous. I need one good thing, not 10 million sort of half-realized things. And Mutants of X, I feel, is really, really tight like that. And here I'm going to get a little bit to my thesis, all right? So let me finish this can. We're going to get into this thesis. I'm going to get a reload on my beverage, and we're going to go into the next part of tonight, okay? That way you know what's coming, and you know what has been, and therefore you know all. All right. What is wrong with maximalism, you may ask? Now, we are RPG collectors. It's dope to have, like, big-ass books with a bunch of cool shit in it, right? I mean, That is part of the hobby of collecting games and collecting game books. You want big piles of cool shit. But this, and there's a little bit of a tie in here. So recently I did a podcast on Patreon called Push and Pull. And Push and Pull is about achieving this balance both in publications and in gameplay. Look, this should be right up here. Whoop. Rise. Oops. Rise. Okay. Push and Pull is basically about psychological conversational dynamics between people. And to spare you the entire podcast, which you can go check out on my Patreon for $1, to spare you that entire thing, answers are like sort of a push that you do to someone while you're talking to them. Now, you've met people like this in a bar when you're having a conversation. All they're doing is hitting you with answers, right? They're telling you things. And if they just tell you things and tell you things and tell you things, you start to feel this sensation. Now, on the other side of the coin, questions are an honest way to pull a person that you're talking to into your conversation. You say like, hey, dude, man, what do you think about all these big mustaches people got nowadays? You know, like, what are your thoughts on that? And if I honestly want to hear your answer, I'm kind of pulling you. I'm pulling you into the conversation. And generally, it feels really good. Being pushed can feel a little bit, yeah. And being pulled feels like, thank you. Thank you for involving me. So I see maximal game design and maximal book design as just having too many damn answers and not enough questions. They're just pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. Yes, info dumps is another name for it. They're pushing me and pushing me. Here's what this is, and here's how to do an Uzi and a pistol and a rifle and a thing, and here's how to do a big rifle, and here's how to do a tiny sword and a medium sword and a big sword and a long sword. Here's what's going on Earth. Here's what's going on Mars. Here's what's going on in Africa. Here's what's going on in South America. Oh, and then there's also 70 years of history. We're going to tell you about that. And just like, pretty soon I'm just like, what am I even here for? Like, if you have all these answers, what the hell is my role in this RPG? Like, gah! Then you come all the way over to a game like Mutants of X, which gives you some really quirky and fun little answers, which are pushes, but then it asks you questions. What is this? What's it going to be? How do you fit in? What do you think? What are you going to make of it? I'm pulling you. I'm pulling you. So these maximal games, I feel, just have no pull and too much push. And so you don't get this little, this little spot right here, the little green spot, which is a balance between pushing and pulling. And to bring me to my sort of supreme thesis here, Symbaroum does this stuff. It does this. Now, I know that's fantasy, but it's got a lot of answers, but asks some questions. It's compact, but it's not small. Mutants of X is small. And I think there's something there that I don't see in a lot of the books that I'm getting until maybe we have this one, which is really a dandy. This is Hack the Planet. Hack the Planet is a cyberpunk treatment of Blades in the Dark by John Harper. Now, first of all, Blades in the Dark is kind of required reading for understanding cyberpunk because it's a game all about the art of the heist. A lot of cyberpunk is heisting. It is planning a complex operation in a way that you can beat completely unsurmountable odds, right? They have like heavy mecha in cyberpunk. There are heavy mechs. There are dudes that are freaking invisible. Like if you just roll up with your Uzi, you're going to get fried, and so you need to plan out a trick. And this is where the heist comes into play. You need to use distractions. You're going to use stealth. You're going to hack the systems. You're going to make decoys. You're going to use the freaking air ducts. These are heists. And Blades in the Dark is brilliant with heists. So this game takes Blades in the Dark and then turns it into about a 300-page cyberpunk book. Now, on some fronts, they commit some of these same sins. It got a little too big, but the art direction's pretty damn cool, and they also added an element. They had an actual idea, which is weather. Weather in Hack the Planet is a core force, and it's damn brilliant because everything has this intrinsic timer of weather hazard to it, and it's damn brilliant. Now, it can be a little bit difficult and complex to adopt all the core mechanics of Blades in the Dark because it's very innovative game design. But just seeing the mindset behind that game design will improve whatever game you're playing or building. And this one I think is brilliant because it takes cyberpunk and finally gives me something new in it, which is volatile weather. and not just volatile, but downright like dangerous and crazy. Really an interesting spin on it that is really worth mentioning. And so I think this is, to me, an example of where things could go that would make me a little bit happier just for my particular taste. Now, there's zillions more Cyberpunk games out there. I never pretend to be exhaustive in any of my sort of list stuff because I'm not that terribly thorough, but this is just my jam. So if you guys are interested in where my jam is, this is sort of the list that I'm into. And these are all worth reading. Even if they're not for you, if I sound negative about them, I still enjoy going, this is how they did it. Interesting. Okay, well, I don't really like what they're doing there. I don't like what they're doing there. But the value in that isn't necessarily getting what you want. If you're a creator especially, it's getting lessons on what to do and what not to do. Really, probably one of the biggest offenders here was the art direction in Carbon 2185. I just don't know what, it's just sort of all over. I don't know if that's cheerful or dystopian or dark or light or action-packed or nuanced or noir or what it is. So that part, but Hack the Planet, definitely worth checking out. Really quite interesting. And by association, Blades in the Dark is something that you absolutely need to read as a cyberpunk thinker. Bebop! Okay, so now before I grab another can and we take a couple of minutes off and keep this stream going, by the way, thank you all 100 of you for tuning in. It's great to have you guys back here on Runehammer. I'm Ingrid Bernal, your host. Before we get into the second part where we're just going to open this up and do some freeform hangout together, which is, what it's really all about, I just want to now talk about what I'm working on. So first of all, hey, look at that. Now that is a fancy cover. Now that's art direction you can really stand behind. No, this is actually just a screen grab of my Google Doc for Retune. Retune is the first of my folded path books that I absolutely want to write more of because this is a blast. It's my answer to Choose Your Own Adventure. It's a little different than classic Choose Your Own Adventure in that the blocks are a little bigger and you get a binary choice at the end of each block. But this is the fiction book from which we are working, me and Alex Alvarez, on our offering, which is going to be an index card RPG game called Altered State, and this is our cyberpunk game. So I just wanted to, plug it a little bit, but also just mention it out of enthusiasm that we're kind of existing in a very interesting collaborative space of writing this branching novel with multiple sort of threads and paths in it, and then using the ideas that arrive in the form of a novel to inform the RPG that we're writing. And to me, this is resulting in something very exciting, which is that we're truly working from the bottom up. Now, top down means I design my whole world, and then I kind of work down to the details. Bottom up means I think of one character in one situation, and then I go from there upward to try to build out a little bit more of a world. And that's the approach we're taking. And I got to say, it's really, really exciting. And I think it's going to be great. So you've got to stay tuned because we've got a ton of play testing to do on Altered State as we go into early next year. Now, a quick plug about why the hell you would ever want to mess with my Patreon is that every year in January, I take signups from my Patreon Discord server and I host about 5 to 7 games with those signups. And this year it's all going to be in Altered State. So if you want to get at the table with old Ingrid Bernal, that's me. That's the route to do it. Yeah, sure, it's like sort of a money grab, I guess, but I got to pay my rent somehow, right? So Altered State, it's going to be great. Alex Alvarez is the lead on it, so you will get like releases and press releases and stuff like that as time goes by. There's one thing I forgot. By his discretion, not mine, because he's kind of the lead on it, and so that's important. Finally, I think, is this it right here? No. Where is this thing? Oh, here it is. Look at this, guys. Okay, last thing I wanted to mention is this guy right here, Blacklight. So my man Mark Eckenrode, I believe is his last name, Shady Mother on the Runehammer Patreon or Discord server, has been spearheading this game called Blacklight. It's absolutely amazing. It's a little bit salient to Cyberpunk because it is modern. There are guns and dark secrets and stuff. But I didn't want to necessarily talk about the amazing thematic content that he's running, which is super cool. And also his sub Discord server is like in character, which is just mind-blowingly brilliant to me. But also, this is a great case in what I've been talking about maximalism versus minimalism. Mark has set out on this journey to make a painfully stripped down game that gives you very little. It's a lot of pulling, like a lot of pulling and very little pushing. It's more like in real life in some ways, where you have very few answers and the adventures are pulling you in. And I'm not sure even how to fully explain how cool this is. I've got a guest spot in his game next Friday, and so I'll give you a report. But the details of his play sessions are top secret, so I can't really spoil anything, which is also just super cool. I just wanted to point it out because I'm really proud to be a part of it and to be helping him on it. But also, I want you guys to keep an eye out for it. And most importantly, it's just a fascinating case study in the art of less leading to more flavor. Another one of my podcasts recently was about qualia, or like establishing real emotion in players and how elusive it can be. And I really think it's the art of pulling, not pushing. And I think for some reason, Cyberpunk has a habit of thinking you need to push the feelings on them, like push the themes and push the data. And I get all these answers and I just actually wind up feeling nothing. Whereas when you pull and you pull and you coax, the feelings get more and more real. So there's a ton more Cyberpunk RPGs out there, but I just don't want to talk for like 3 hours and list them all out. These are just the ones that have been inspiring and informing me recently, and that I've found really worthwhile to have. Some more than others, obviously. But I know there's a bunch more if you guys want to throw other recommendations so that future viewers can keep on browsing and searching in their journey of cyberpunk learning and thinking. They can always come to this video and look in the comments and see great suggestions. You guys did a fantastic job with that on my last Cyberpunk video, which was about source material. So many cool novels had appeared in those comments. That's really helpful, so thank you everybody for doing that. So that's kind of my breakdown on where I'm at with my Cyberpunk RPG research, what I think of the books I've gotten through so far, and a little hint of what I'm working on, which is, my Choose Your Own Adventure novel, our new RPG, helping Mark with Blacklight. And don't forget about those super cool YouTube creators, okay? So I am going to put up my logo, and I'm going to go and take 30 seconds and grab another can. And basically, I think everybody should go and get yourself a nice beverage and come on back, and let's kick it and talk about whatever's going on with you guys for a while. And, just kind of hang out. I got nothing going on tonight. I mean, let's just be straight up about it, all right? I'm just here. I'm here to chill. And chill is what we're going to do. So I'll be right back. Stay tuned. Thanks all. 100 So you're no longer in Cyberpunk land because I got a friendly green shirt on. You got a friendly green shirt on, you know, you know what I mean? Yes, I have behavioral issues. I'm a strange person. So I'll just kick this off. You know, my main concern right now is going to be busting out these games in January. Last time we had like 25 players in a living world crisscrossing between the games, and I'm like, I have to do that again? Oh, dear God, how do I run a game? I've been just being such a bum and being a player all year. It's been awesome. But time to run mo games. And next year, 2020, I'm just going to GM all year. I'm done playing next year. So that's where I'm at. That's why I'm doing all this research. I'm getting like back into the absolute core of all this stuff. Is like I took really almost a year off from GMing just to play every week. And it's a great way to up your enthusiasm and up your skills, and like been great. So I'm going to crack open a freshie. And look at that. I'm part of the white crawl problem. So tasty. So trendy. Runehammer, brought to you by White Claw. It's trendy and not nearly as good as beer. Okay. Okay, where are we at? Drinking the dust serpents. Oh, this is beer reports. Okay, I'm going to just start at the bottom here. Where are we at? Advice I got from Hank. Don't worry about... Oh, yeah. It's all about execution. Yeah, do it. Haven't gotten to be a player in a long time. Well, man, you got to. It's like essential for remembering what makes good game mastering. Here we go. Park Shields is throwing it down. Park, what's up? Good to see you again, as always. Was there a way to beat the pure text thing you did on YouTube last winter? Pure text? Huh? To beat it? What? What's pure text? Pure text sounds amazing. Goblin's not. I'm having some kind of lager. What is this? Some kind of lager. Start by creating something. Yeah. So if you want to get into creation, if I see there's this other thread going there, then yeah, it's just like everything else. Just begin doing it. It's the only way to develop the muscles. It's just begin doing it. Do it with some success and some failure, and just begin. I mean, just ask people you trust and believe in and like to look at what you're working on and give you honest, reactions, and take that reaction to heart, and don't be butthurt when it's bad, and don't be big head when it's good, and it's just like going to the gym, man. You just got to wake up and just go there. Just showing up is half the battle. The other half is putting in some work, but showing up is the biggest part. The pure text thing. That's right. The pure text thing, that was RPG Mainframe episode 38. And that was just something fun. I just wanted to show an idea that could be on YouTube. I don't know if I was ever going to take that anywhere. It was just sort of, I mean, I'm a really big fan of just doing whatever your creativity wants you to do. Whether it goes anywhere or not is not for your creative mind to worry about. A year later, you can be curious if that was worthwhile. But creativity lives in freedom. I think freedom's really important. Yeah. But Park, I know what you mean now. That was really fun to do that. That was just almost like a prank or a gag. I was just being silly. What's a good cyberpunk villain? Damn, that's a dope question. Well, I don't think it's just a person. I think that everything in cyberpunk that's going to make it good. Remember, we had a comment earlier that it's too limiting to be in cyberpunk. It's got to have everything that fantasy has, and that means it needs monster of the week. That means it needs strange creatures and things to discover. It can't just be people. Like, oh, the villain is this asshole guy who's in a suit with a sword. Like, fuck, no, that's not cool enough. This is somewhere where Shadowrun was brilliant. There's actually like a freaking dragon that's running a corporation. Now, that may be too silly for some people to deal with, but I think you need something like that. I think actually the Spider-Verse movie was pretty cool the way it treated Kingpin. He wasn't just like a dude. He was like a gigantic dude. It was really interesting and different. It was really cool. But I would say a cyberpunk villain needs to be non-human. It needs to be some kind of new evolving life form, some kind of other thing. Like 2105 in Ghost in the Shell was a brilliant villain. A brilliant. Butthurt and big head. I love that show on MTV, Butt Hurt and Big Hit. Um, Maybe I can do Cyberpunk D&D. Yeah, I mean that's Shadowrun. You're perfectly describing Shadowrun. Every D&D game I've run kind of winds up in some kind of cyber world. I mean, like, I don't know if you guys took that recent survey, but I was like, my favorite source book in D&D is Spelljammer. Thank you. Um, yeah, your local ATM only, yeah, like, the consciousness of Attila the Hun has accidentally been downloaded into a vending machine, and this thing's, but it's really is a good question with no easy answers. What makes a good villain? And I assume you mean like a prime villain in Cyberpunk. And I really do think it needs to be something big like Kingpin from Spider-Man, but not human. It needs to be a dark, strange thing that reveals how weird the world has gotten. Because if the world has only gotten as weird as you can see it, like, oh, there's a lot of buildings and Japanese signs and people with cybernetics, that's not weird. That's not a cool enough discovery. It needs to be bigger, older, and scarier. Frank Miller's Ronin. Yeah, good answer. Dope answer. Post-human experiments getting out of control. Absolutely. Free-form life forms, as we call it in Altered State, and other stuff like that. Stuff like the creatures in Dead Space. Like darker things that stretch the genre. Not just like some asshole who has a bunch of money who like wants you dead. That's not cool enough. Working for money is not cool in any game. Ever. Especially Cyberpunk. So you need big forces of evil that you're working against. I got to be careful how much I say here because I'm getting into like what we're working on. I need to push my players to try other things. And oh yeah, and they never play other systems. That is a problem that almost every GM I know has. Is that GMs are fascinated by systems, not players. Players do not want to learn systems. So you need usually the solution is to get a group that is comprised of GMs. But also, if people just like what they like, then, maybe just the content can switch up. Or you can add mechanics a la carte and see what sticks and see what people like. Yeah, Ravnica has a little bit of that feel. Unfortunately, Ravnica is Ravnica. Okay. Artificial intelligence trying to control. Yes, Michael Legg. That is what Neuromancer is all about. That is what Wintermute and Wintermute's companion, Neuromancer, they want to sort of form this supreme AI. It's a major problem because it's hooked into everything like Skynet. If it joins, it's going to make the human race obsolete. Wonderful mega villain. Thanks for the reminder. One of the upcoming sessions has great. A lot of cyberpunk aesthetic is the paranoia surrounding scientific advancements. Yes, I still think that generally a lot of cyberpunk as a preface to a statement about what would be cool is a bad path to go down because you wind up just going down paths that have already been done. So what I would ask is, what haven't you had in cyberpunk? Like a fun answer might be a freaking vampire. Where are my vampires at? Like, I want a cybernetic vampire. Now you're freaking talking. That's a villain. What's the best way to run a kick-ass low fantasy world when half your party can use magic all day? There is no way. There's no way. If half your party is using magic just like yada-dee, yada-da, it's not low fantasy, period. I mean, even Gandalf could barely do anything. He could barely do like 2 spells per movie. So that's not, you're giving me a straw man there. I can't give you an answer on that because that's like self-contradicting. So you either need to run with the people doing magic all day and like that's your campaign, or they can't anymore and now you're back to low fantasy. Now some campaigns can be low and then be high and alternate as players are discovering secrets and things are changing. But honestly, if you have linear character progression like in 5e and in many RPGs, it's going to be very hard to alternate between high and low. What I haven't had in my worlds yet, a spider who wants to become a god. Well, throw it in. Cyber Vampire was done in the movie Chronos. Oh, nice. Deep cut there. Altered State, you hinted at it. Dice pool in a new system or a subsystem of RPG. It is ICRPG, Big Grump. It is, but we do have new subsystems. Yes, we do. And Index Card RPG is now approaching its 3rd edition, which is going to be next year at some point, and you're going to see hints of that in Altered State. You're also going to see hints of that in ICRPG Mobile, which is coming out here very soon, which is an interactive sort of rules core that you can use on your phone. And ICRPG is in German and French and Spanish now. I know it's being played in China, and like we're actually like, it seems to be sticking, which is mind-blowing to me. So third edition is going to get back to some of the fundamentals of how index cards are core to the idea. There's been a lot of cleanup because of the thousands of hours of gameplay that have gone into it and all that great stuff. Any thoughts on General Motors selling virtual presence devices that you can maintain and send to do your job on days you want to stay home? Absolutely no thoughts. I don't know what that is or why we would want to do that. Like, going to work is like one of the fundamental pleasures of life. Like, why would I want a virtual presence? Oh, virtual presence where there's a screen rolling around in a robot. We had one of those at a gag in one of the video game shops I worked in. It was funny, but useless. Okay. What makes a good dice pool system? Anti-grav. Look at the fundamentals in Shadowrun 2E. The good dice pool system is, one, knowing exactly how many dice you're about to get ready on your turn. So you're like looking at your strength score. It's 6. You pick up 6 dice and you're going, I'm going to punch him. Bah! There you go. That's a good dice pool system. A bad dice pool system is like, well, you're going to add 1, you're going to take 2 away, then you're going to add 1 more, then you're going to take 3 away. And I'm like, so how many am I hitting me with algebra? So I think you really want to keep it clean. And then you've got a lot of options as far as total, as far as a binary outcome of like this dice is useless or not useless, or you've got best possible dice. There's a lot of ways you can measure outcome on dice pool, and a lot of them are pretty cool. I like total, personally. I think total is a blast because the variability is so big. That means total of dice rolled. So if on 66, I can get between 6 and 36 as my roll, and if, let's say, my obstacle is 20, I think that's exciting. Whereas doing binary is a little less interesting because your obstacles are like between 1 and 4, like in Mouse Guard. And if you do best possible, then your obstacles are going to be like between 2 and 6. So you get a lot smaller variability on those subsystems. But on just totaling your dice, oh my God, it's so fun because you're like, 10d6, bitch, here comes my freaking rocket launcher. Boo! And then you roll all ones and everybody's just like, ha, you suck. That's really fun. That's why the D20 is so fun. It has that wide variability. Hank, you mentioned cyber vampires. Have you ever looked at the Glasswalkers from Werewolf Apocalypse or Book the Weaver? No, I haven't, and it sounds absolutely wonderful. Hook me up, man. Throw that in the comments, will you? Or send me an email. Can we get any insight on Viking Death Squad? Absolutely. So somewhere in this schedule of projects, and then the commissions, which recently somebody in Reddit was critiquing me that all I do is spend my time doing commissions because I'm greedy or something. I have no concept of why someone would say that. But I am always responsive to everything that I see about what I'm trying to do as a brand. So I have been trying to roll back doing any commissions at all. So I'm doing very few. So somewhere in this schedule, I would like to put out Viking Death Squad. It has nothing to do with Index Card RPG. It is its own complete core system that uses a completely different set of dice mechanics and a completely different set of world movement mechanics. It's just, so far my patrons don't really seem to want to put my time into that. And to be totally freaking honest, I really do go where my patrons want me to go. I know Patreon is a little bit annoying to some people. Like, I don't really want to throw money at this or whatever. But honestly, for a lot of creators in a lot of different industries right now, it's survival shit. And it's a big part of how I survive. And so if my users want to see something, that's freaking what I do. And I like it that way. That's why I did Relics of Odium and Bearcats. Like, I'm really proud of those creations. I busted my ass making those things in 1 month each. And that was because my patrons summoned me to the task. And so if my patrons, like you, Park, say, dude, make Viking Death Squad, quit fucking around with that other stuff. Like, that's what I'm doing. So I just try to read that ghost and make everybody psyched. Yeah, Benny, I recently got contacted from some guys in Macau who are playing ICRPG. Can you believe that? It's dope. What's the most boring way to start a Cyberpunk campaign? Some guys are like in the gutter and they have like, this guy is going to like repossess their apartment if they don't pay him off. So they need like 300 credits in the next 24 hours. And so they're forced to be part of like a small time crime thing, like an armed robbery. And then they accidentally get tangled up in some bigger situation. That's the worst way to start Cyberpunk. So not cool. So not cool. You want to start a cyberpunk the cool way? Take a look at like freaking Blade Runner and stuff. Take a look at feelings of much bigger mysteries that aren't just how am I going to get 25 creds? Like ugh, super ugh with a capital U. Um, I'm not sure what you're talking about there, Gary. Okay. Oh, because of what they're saying. Yeah. Just because of commissions. Yeah. Well, hey. By the way, hey Gary, what's up? Welcome to the stream, man. Good to have you, dude. Cheeser McGee. Okay, we'll do for the comment. Original Shadowrun with the dice pools somewhere between. Yeah. Question. Thank you. By the way, if you put capitals question in front of your question, it really does help because my eyes are a mess. Especially today, I've been reading like a beast all day, and so I'm kind of like. Anyway, have you looked at play the new Cyberpunk miniature game by Osprey Games? No, I haven't. The only one I really know about as far as Cyberpunk Skirmish is Hardwired. Hardwired is okay. Generally, miniature skirmish games leave me a bit flat. I'm not quite sure what to do with them. I really feel like Grimdark by Gaetano Ferrara really solved a lot of these problems once and for all. And also Relic Blade. I think Relic Blade provides a supreme solution to the miniature combat problem. So I have a hard time getting interested in it, but I would love to know more about that. I really would. Yes, drugs are definitely part of it. So yeah. Still going on the villain thing, which is great. I think the most boring way to start. Yeah. Three guys in an apartment shouldn't be short 300 creds for rent. Yeah, but it's why it's a dystopia, dude. Oh man, okay. Yo man, what up, G? Um okay, now I'm just looking for question. There it is. Bionics plus enhancements are such a big thing in Cyberpunk. Absolutely. I think there's a big focus on tech. How do you feel about mutations or augmentations of biologic style? Absolutely. That's one of the coolest things about replicants is that they're not robots. They don't have wires in their guts or something. They're grown, especially when Roy goes and talks to Tyrell. They're talking about how to use polypeptides and longer chain proteins to ensure that these grown organic bodies are more durable and stuff. I think that's freaking brilliant. You want to talk about high tech. Machines are not high tech. Bodies are high tech. And even in the newer Blade Runner movie, remember he's dissatisfied because they can't make a reproducing replicant. And I think that's a fascinating theme. And also far more disturbing. Machines are not nearly as scary as synthetic people. And I think there's something terribly interesting there about being able to grow life forms that are self-aware and stuff, and like what can go wrong with that. So I think any good game needs to really talk about that. And you're right, prosthetics generally take the stage a lot more because they're kind of cooler looking. You can't really provide a look to a synthetic, except I think like Rachel from the first Blade Runner movie is the ultimate. She's this overly perfect character and absolutely amazing. I think that actress, for me, created an absolutely timeless image of noir cyberpunk, which is this sort of perfect synthetic replicant woman who's just like amazing. And to me, that's nuance. That's an interesting character. Park is back. Question: how was Chuck's Odium game? Oh, it was goddamn wonderful. And how was okay? So what Park is talking about here is one of our guys on Discord, Chuck, ran a Relics of Odium, which is one of my games I produced on Patreon. That's its own sort of big asset pack. And I got to be a player, and he was the GM, which is really fun playing in your own creation like that. And I played a kind of a dummy, basically, from one of Alex's old games, like 2 years ago. And I'm always like a really noble character, and I kind of played like this total bonehead. And it was super duper fun. Actually, Chuck practically runs a game mastering clinic on how like monsters don't matter, the complexity of things doesn't really matter. What matters is the relationship between the players and that things keep moving. And we never really hit a challenge that was that intricate or honestly that fascinating. We're just kind of plowing through some enemies, and we're plowing through these enemies, and there's kind of this. But the fact that it just kept moving just made it so damn fun. It never slogged, and he really taught me a lot playing in that game. That was a blast. Yo, V. Yo, Victor D. What up? Okay, so I'm looking for the capital question here. But I think I see Cabe asking one here. Is YouTube and RPG design your dog? No, this is it. Yeah, Cabe Skywalker. Runehammer is all I got. This is it, man. I live on the absolute edge. and also, I write novels and stuff like that. And really, to be super honest, my dream as a creator is to just be an author. But it is really, really tough to break into authorship without just keeping a side job. And honestly, the excitement I had for Index Card RPG was too much to contain. I was too distracted trying to have a side job, so I had to go all in. I do not recommend it, by the way. It's scary. I think a lot of people would be quite terrified of the risk you have by just doing your own solo business. But if you have the gumption to be an entrepreneur, it's a blast. And like a great community like this, it's an absolute hoot. It is hard work, but I wake up every day wanting to do it. So that's just where I'm at. But yeah, this is my jam right here. This is all I got is you guys. Well, I don't know if Chuck needs a YouTube channel. I mean, Chuck's just beautiful being Chuck. All right, question. You mentioned Turing test. Yes, absolutely. What could be an encounter inspired by it? Oh, this is a wonderful question. I think what you could do is an encounter or series of encounters that are around trying to figure out if someone or something is intelligent or isn't synthetic or is real. And I think that the encounter could take the form of maybe, the classic thing where the wizard turns into like 7 wizards and you're trying to figure out which one is the real one and you're having to fight 7 clones like Doctor Strange style. You can have something like that where you have a bit more nuanced test of which one is the sort of the synthetic and which one is the real. And it could be a combination of combat and decking and subtle clues about which one is mechanical and stuff. But I think anytime you're wondering what is mechanical and what's real, that's exciting. That's fun. And looking into the black box of what it means to not be real or to be synthetic or to be AI is that's what Ghost in the Shell is all about, right? When 2105 takes over the garbage men, that is, you're playing the Turing test game right there. Now, exactly how you get the role play to happen, that's not up to you. You're only here to ask the questions. You're the GM. The players are the ones who have to sort of probe for the answers. And so I think there's a lot of possibility there. Are you going to write more books? I'm freaking loving Shield of Hanar. Oh, dude, thank you, man. Appreciate that. Well, yeah, I'm working on Retune right now. When Retune is done, I'm not quite sure what's next after that. Honestly, I really want to write some horror. And I think I want to do it folded path style. So I want to do a sort of choose your own horror. Really have a lot of horror stories that I've been keeping under wraps. I have a sort of a huge anthology of horror stories called Death by Whiskey that I've been hiding for almost 4 years now. I'm not sure what to do with it, but I want to get into writing some horror. I write every day. I write 2,000 to 3,000 words a day on various things. So I write a lot. I really just want to go all in on it. By the way, thanks for the holler on Shield of Hanar. That's my favorite of the 3 books. Are you aware of Tilt 5? Nope, I don't know what that is. Question, why is Shaker so sleepy? And why is Scranton so adorable? Torog Drakeson. By the way, thanks for showing up and the support, Torog. I appreciate it. Your name is absolutely amazing. Shaker is sleepy because he busts his ass at his job and he's a good dad. And Scranton is adorable because he shaves his head with meticulous attention to detail. I think a little bit of both, Sergio. Question, what's the internet like in a cyberpunk setting? Minimal. The idea that there's a virtual reality is not cool. It's dumb. It's like it's such a misguided view of what cool computer systems would be like in a time that it seemed like that would be neat. I think when you deck into something, in my vision of it, you need a cerebral link because you want to spare all this mechanical interface. You deck in, maybe it reads retina movement or it reads eye movement in some way, and you just get an overlay of a very stripped down file structure. That's it. And if you need visual data, you get a little bit of that, a map perhaps. But minimalism is the ultimate form of technology. Let's face it. So turning into a polygon samurai and chopping your way through cybersecurity and running down a tunnel in the internet is dumb. I'm just going to go on record saying that. Where do you see cyberpunk technology? More reflective of our age? Absolutely not. It is so far gone. If you guys read A Pound of Flesh, which is a new Mothership source book, it's a very dense book, but it's got some very interesting feeling of technology, and it's very odd. I think there's going to be an oddity to it, and an organicness to it. But even more so, I hate to be a broken record, but it's minimal. It's minimal, minimal, minimal. So let's say I have an Uzi and it has a reflex link on it, right? It's like a little wire, or maybe it's wireless. I don't know. The cheaper version is a wire. And it just like anywhere on your skin, it'll just go and suck on, and it will figure out a way to interact with your neurons and your brain in a way that will make you draw and fire faster. You don't set up a freaking menu. You don't turn this thing on or off. Like, you don't even worry about its power source. You don't charge things anymore. Like, minimal, minimal, minimal. And this is where I think Cyberpunk can be like fantasy. It's not more tech. Tech gets higher and disappears from our lives. It does not become more central. That is so not the idea. And I think that's a fun rally point to stretch the genre. Will you ever will you ever flesh out a setting in the 9s, Alfheim? Or is it more your style to leave it the DM? Yeah, absolutely leave it. It's more than fleshed out enough. It's actually going to shrink for 3rd edition. I don't like making big maximal things. I've been wanting to expand a lot more with VO work. How can I read 1 or 2 chapters from Mud and Horn? Alpha, if you go to Audible and search Runehammer, each book has a sample on it of a chapter. So go check it out. Use your monthly credit and grab one of those dang old audiobooks. And if that's hard for you to afford, you can email me and I'll send you the entire book compressed into a single zip file that you can listen to. Tell me what you think. Question. How do you, as a DM, roleplay an artificial being? How do you get into such an alien mindset? Well, you start by thinking of bottom up. You don't start thinking about, like, what do artificial beings like in my world? No, you think about one artificial being. And let's take Rachel, for example. In Blade Runner, she's an artificial being. What is her stance? Well, she's sort of cold, honestly. She's very unimpressed with things because she knows she's artificial, and she's relatively detached and doesn't really want to get involved in shit. Really, all she wants to do is postpone her own death because it's like predetermined. That's almost all I need. Then I need my cigarette in my hand, and then I need my swarthy look. And I'm halfway there. I don't think they need to be like, I am the AI from the Nomad. That's like Star Trek from the 60s. That's not high tech. That's not interesting to me. I think it's just put yourself inside of a personality. Where we go. Sean Prather. Question. Would you argue that there's still room for analog living in digital cyberpunk? Absolutely. I think that cyberpunk is more analog than it is digital. The digital level is just so high tech that it's weird. But remember, cyberpunk is an aftermath. It is not a wonder world like, everything working great. Oh boy. No, like half the power is out. The digital is reserved for the elite or the rich. It's all about like ramen on the streets and like motorcycles. I mean, look at Akira. There's almost nothing digital in Akira. It's all this analog feeling of this world of Tokyo that has nothing to do with digital things. And that's what makes it so brilliant. Take Ghost in the Shell for another example. You don't really get pestered with the digital part. I mean, they do show that one spot where they have the brain wired up to the little console, but the little console is kind of like a little analog number console. You don't need all this digital stuff. All you need to know is that strange things are possible. Yep. Whew, hey, it's a break. Hello, Dr. Falcon. Wouldn't you like to play a game? What was your most surprising epiphany about Retune? System or fluff, otherwise? Well, Retune, as the Choose Your Own Adventure novel, it was how to write these. I mean, these are not easy to write, especially if you want to like do it well and make it nuanced and mature. It is not easy, and I did all the homework. It was very difficult. It takes a lot of just doing and doing it wrong to see how to write it. There's no easy way, and I hope when Retune is done, I'll be able to look back. As far as Altered State, I think the biggest challenge was surprising epiphany. Surprising epiphany was that I think maybe that a world without money is really a huge key. A world that's more like the fantasy worlds that we all love, but that's cyberpunk, is essential. I think it's really critical to make it a more lasting game. And I think we had that epiphany somewhat early, but it was still kind of like, whoa. What do you think interstellar travel should be like in Cyberpunk? It should be irrelevant. You have no access to it. You just call them off-worlders and you're done talking about it. It's just, that's it. It's like rich people and corporations have all left, and a lot of the power infrastructure and electricity infrastructure left with them, and we're the ones left behind. That's it. You do not go to other planets. You're not cool enough. There are no ships left. Those days are in the past. Question. Speaking of Cyberpunk, have you seen Final Cut? The Final Cut. The only thing I know of the Final Cut is the Pink Floyd album, which was fantastic. Question. Do you see yourself doing... Oh, it's Park again. What you're doing currently, creative for the rest of your days? I am not sure what I will do for the rest of my days except love other human beings. But yeah, I mean, well, no, not entirely. I do want to be a writer for many years because I think I have some really good writing in me. And I think I have the habits to push my skills and arrive as a writer. I think in my 50s especially, I think I could be a damn good writer. Beyond that, yeah, I think I'm going to get a little tired, and I would like to sweep some floors and do some dishes and clean tables and flip chairs at the end of the night. I really enjoy doing that stuff. It may sound silly, but I do like being a sort of a hired hand in a bar. I know that sounds goofy, but it's something I take a lot of pride in and that I enjoy, and I could see that being part of my life. That's a deep question, though, man. That's a big one. Okay, moving down, Mr. Potato Head. Do animals factor into your Cyberpunk games? I think that there would be very, very, very few animals that would be around. You would have to go very far out to really encounter animals of any quantity or size. I think this is part of why it's a dystopia, is that the Earth can only handle so much urban. And then you reach a point where you're on the downward slope, where the urban stuff starts to lose power and shut down, where you have junk zones like in the second Blade Runner movie. And that's where, like, you know, parks and forests used to be. Or the farming sort of went too far and sort of stripped the land a little bit. So I think animals wouldn't be something you encounter a lot. Or even in Blade Runner, you know, like, hey, is this a real python? It's like, of course not. We grew this thing. Okay, Gary, tell me about IPRPG V3. Well, it has been a thread that has a couple thousand posts in it. It's got several thousand hours of playtesting and very slowly working on the InDesign files. But if I hit any part of it that I don't feel is playtested far enough, or where the answers aren't really clear and clearly better answers than what we have so far, just stop. It's just going to take time. And as always, all my readers get 3rd edition free. So it's going to be great. It's also going to be an 8x10 book. I do know that. It's going to be more sort of a full-size book. And we're also going to have amnesty on all the old assets. So those are all going to be free. There's going to be a tarot set to get your sort of your card sort of jam going. There's a lot planned for it, but it just takes a long time because I don't believe in deadlines really. So I just have to make sure it's worth another edition because so many people are out there playing 2nd edition, which is still sort of blowing my mind apart. But I owe them that time to keep playtesting. I don't want to pull that rug out from under them. Thoughts on Shadowrun's magic system? Anchors on spells and animates and such. Definitely not my favorite part of Shadowrun. I felt that they were out on their antipodes a little bit with that. They're on the edge of their skill set. As far as doing magic, I wouldn't really do it the way they did it. I would make it a daily system like in D&D, or I would make it a role system like in ICRPG. But, you know, I don't think like a caster that much. And if you guys go watch ESPER's new video, he has such a great critique about how casters have been made the cool part of D&D. And like 4E in D&D was like fighter's paradise. It was so cool. And then in 50, the kind of fighters got dumb again, which is a little bit sad. But honestly, I play fighters all the time. So I don't really have super strong opinions on magic systems, except the ones that I've been trying to develop, which really are just the results of player input. Have you seen Gattaca? Yes, several times. It's Cyberpunk before the break in the wave. So it's Cyberpunk when the off-worlding is still happening. And it does have some identity strangeness in it. But no, if there's not an Uzi, to me it's not Cyberpunk. And so they're not quite there. It's just a little too clean and too happy. You know, like, things can't still be on the rise, in my opinion, and it be Cyberpunk. Like, even Altered Carbon, to me, isn't quite Cyberpunk. The things are not decaying yet in Altered Carbon. It's still on the rise, and to me that doesn't quite fit. Oh man, I love Impossible Burgers. So good. I very much look forward to the future where that is more. There's more of that. Take my money. I refuse. Question. Whew. This takes more energy than the early part of the show. The fuck? Thanks all 130 of you for tuning in. Good to have you. I'm Ingrid Bernal. This is Runehammer. We're talking about whatever the fuck. Drinking some tasty beverages on Saturday night. What? Wait, whoa. Everything's scrolling. What are the groups or factions that are left behind? Oh, Skull, grant me this boot. You know, I think you only need one or two to get a sense of depth. And I think actually Adam Koebel's front system from Dungeon World is really informative in this particular case. So a lot of times you get into Cyberpunk and there's like 20 different gangs and 20 different armies and 20 different megacorps and all these factions and all this stuff going on in the city. And I'm just like, oh my God, it's like living in Manhattan. I think more interestingly, you build from the bottom up. So if you take a retune, for example, there's really only really two factions that are at play. And even that provides tons of input. So I would have something that's kind of like unsanctioned military or dark ops military. And then I would have something that's weird. Like in retune, it's called the New Earth Resistance. And they're like free-form life forms. That's it. So you have a culty thing, and you got a kind of like a Blackwater kind of thing. And then you. Go. You reviewed, yeah, I did review the new Pathfinder, correct. I was wondering why you're such a fan of the system. Yeah, well, Craig Curtis, I still think that D20 rollover with lots of big bonuses is fun and cool. I still think that Pathfinder is well thought out. It's brilliant. It's just too big and too much for me because I am smaller and I believe in more questions than answers. So I don't like that part of Pathfinder. But to be totally honest, Pathfinder has never let me down. I love their adventure books. I've loved their gear books. I've loved their monster books. I got to say, a little bit more than the WotC books, especially the Wayne Reynolds era. I'm just such a huge fan of his work that inspired me tremendously, and I didn't feel like it was rehash in the way that 5e has felt like rehash to me. So I really love Pathfinder and 4e. To me, they're like, that's the good stuff. Do you feel that Mad Max is Cyberpunk? Absolutely. Yeah, Mad Max is Cyberpunk even further down the line. There's less. There's no more digital, for example. There's barely electricity or even gas anymore. There's really all the cities are gone. So it's more like post-apoc, I guess, technically. But if you still had a couple cities that were still put together in Mad Max, to me, that would instantly make it Cyberpunk in a way. It's just Mad Max is out there. It's not here in the city. So who knows what the cities might look like in Mad Max? We were never shown that. Let's see. Tilt 5 is augmented reality glasses. Oh, please, God, no. Anything I have to put on my head that has to do with computers, I'm absolutely out. Out, out, out. Anyone who's done any time in VR, like I did quite a bit of, knows it fricking sucks to put lensy, big computer hot things on your fricking head. It's doomed tech. If they can make it as light as glasses, it might be interesting tech. But from the talk that I heard at Oculus a couple years ago, basically it would have to be solid diamonds to have that level of refraction. The tech just isn't there yet. I don't want things on my head. Seeing holograms on things is just sort of dumb to me. I'm sorry. It just is. And then having a goofy thing on your head is even dumber. So I know that it's important tech that's going to transition us to something cooler like retina stuff. I do think retina overlays that lives in a contact lens would be pretty cool, but I think we are super far from that. So God bless all the people working on the transitional tech that gets us there. Hell yeah. But for me, no. That one thing with the people playing the tabletop game with the big white plastic things on their head, absolutely not. It's just silly pants. Nomenclature. Nomenclature. What would religion be like in Cyberpunk, I assume? The best one I can think of is the cult in Akira. I think it's just sort of a basic like doomsday cult. Oh no, it's the Akira cult, which is a sort of a doomsday cult. Because remember, releasing Akira is what destroyed Neo Tokyo. in the movie, and then there's this cult that sort of wants Akira to come back and cleanse the world again. I love that cult. It has the crazy like daimyo type guy that leads them, and they carry him around on a little platform. And when they think Tetsuo is becoming the next like prophet of Akira, they're all drawn to him with flags and they're rioting and stuff. It was genius, absolutely amazing. But I think it would be more fun as a cult. And I don't think that AIs are as interesting for that cult as something like Akira. And this is, again, why Akira, to me, is one of the best cyberpunks, because it doesn't just draw on the same old, same old. Its foundation is something far stranger than something like an AI like 2105 in Ghost in the Shell. So you could have a cult worshiping 2105, but to me, that's actually what they did in the Scarlett Johansson version of Ghost in the Shell, which is a travesty on the human race. But they had this sort of cult. Remember, they had all the different minds that were working together to create a networked consciousness. I find that less interesting than that sort of doomsday cult that was worshiping Akira, which some people didn't even know that Akira was real and stuff. And then the fact that they found it and Tetsuo releases it with his mind and everything. Holy shit. So crazy. Paranoia is really fun. It's sort of like, Smash TV kind of a feeling. It is cyberpunky, but it's also just complete insanity. It's just like craziness. To me, it doesn't really inform where I want to go with things because of its sense of comedy and craziness. Like you could sort of say the same thing about Tank Girl. Like Tank Girl kind of has a cyberpunk feel to it, but I wouldn't put it in my list. But talk about an Uzi wrapped in tape. I mean, it kind of answers some of the fundamentals. But Tank Girl's just so silly. So silly. I reached the end of the questions. Yes. Just feel that. Just feel those ions washing over your body. Oh, feel them washing over the body. Yes. Oh, yeah. It's good to have all you 130 of you guys. This is great fun, you know. Glad you guys are just as chilled out as I am on a Saturday night, not busy doing a bunch of cool stuff. And, you know, it'll start again next weekend, like Saturday night will be booked with some kind of great fun. So I figured, why not just jump on the chance tonight to hang out and have a couple drinks, talk about RPGs. Is there a point where this hobby becomes top heavy and falls in on itself? Is it a fad? Yes, it's happening right frickin' now. Wendy's RPG, case in point. To be honest, right now, it's getting so popular, it's pretty damn annoying, really. And so I do some days rise and fall where I'm just like, what am I a part of right now? Why is this so stinking popular? But I'll tell you what, as Scott Hamilton said, one of my heroes, I'm a big longevity guy. I'm really big on longevity, and I think like all fads, the true heads will just kind of ride it out. You know, think about what happened to snowboarding, what happened to skateboarding, what happened to grunge, what happened to punk. You know, like special interests, like what happened to anime. Special interests get inundated by this popularity, and then the locust swarm, once they've eaten enough of the crops, they move on to the next thing. And we just need to survive long enough for them to go away. And in the meantime, yes, it's going to kill some of my enthusiasm. Some days it does make me feel like, why are there so many people involved in RPGs nowadays? Like, it used to be such a safe haven for nerds, and now everybody thinks they're a nerd, which is interesting. But big longevity guy. Believe in what you believe in. Hold tight with the stuff that you love. Yes, the fad part is going to be annoying, but it will also pass. So we're just going to be hanging out together, huddling against the popularity part, and hopefully it'll just go away. I really think Kickstarter is one of the worst appendages of that popularity that is fueling a negative feedback cycle of way too much money being hurled at things that are sort of flash in the pan feeling, and it's just too many things and too many releases, and it's just, I don't think it's very good for the overall feeling of things. Also, I just don't like waiting in line for whatever I'm interested in. So if I want to go get a Whopper, I don't want everybody to go and get Whoppers. It's not that I don't want everybody to be happy. It's just I don't like waiting in line, especially when it comes to my hobby. So I don't know if that was an informative answer. Would body horror work well with Cyberpunk? Absolutely. Videodrome, man. Videodrome, Existenz, all that Cronenberg type stuff. The horror associated with cybernetics and how they can go wrong, like in the movie Split Second, absolutely goes great. It's peanut butter and jelly, I think. I'm waiting for MR. I don't want. Oh, Mick RPG. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I really felt a bit mocked by that. I felt that they were almost like mocking us, and I don't like that feeling too much. So, thoughts. Cyberpunk's view of the future was wrong and incredibly valuable. Well, I don't think we can say it was wrong quite yet because we haven't seen if it pans out or not. Like, hyper urbanism is definitely a thing that may befall the Earth. It's hard to say. And I do think that the digital part is almost guaranteed. So we have a couple of elements that are definitely in progress. It's only D&D 5 that's overly popular. Yes, but I mean, it's only D&D that's overly popular. The rest of it isn't. I mean, that is like one of the hugest pillars that brings our hobby into the spotlight. So I look forward to that popularity drifting because I really think it's sort of adding water to what was once a very potent chili. Um, even some of these recent revelations. I love the post by Sly Flourish, sorry, that said, that it's sad that the Essentials kit includes CR3 monsters. For first level players, and like there are 10-year-olds out there who are hacking the CR3 monsters because they have like 270 hit points or something. To me, I don't know. These are parts of the trying to get everyone to play it kind of stuff that leads to shoots and ladders. But it's going to be okay. Fads rise and fall. We're still going to be here. I mean, I got nothing else to do. That's not true. I think that being a good writer and being a smart, analytical, creative person both feed right into enjoying RPGs, and I think that part of the hobby will remain immutable over time. I think the sort of popularity and let's film each other doing it and stuff like that will fade a little bit. It's just like, remember fitness stuff on Instagram? Like, it was insane there for a minute, and that is definitely crested and reduced a ton. And I think the similar thing is going to happen. Everybody was filming themselves doing push-ups, like everyone around the world. It's like 5 years ago and 6 years ago, and that's, I think we're going to see a similar curve to things. Looking for question because there's so much I can't read all this. Question, there it is. Can you give me some cool color, shapes, patterns that come to mind when you think of cyberpunk textures and weather? Yes, Jesse, thanks for the question. That's quite insightful. I, as you may guess, I would quickly go against the pink and cyan primary yellow look that you see on the covers of almost all these books. I mean, I know that it sort of works for the tableau, but I think a far more interesting palette would be something like white and light gray, and almost like the Metal Gear Solid type palette. I think that's more interesting. Or even if you look at something more contemporary like Death Stranding, you've got this gray, brown, and sort of warm yellow palette. That's also a very natural looking palette. I think that's much more interesting. If you look at some of the palettes in the newer Blade Runner movie, they have some really interesting shapes too, which are like human shapes as well as big blocky undetailed shapes. And I just think that there's a lot of places for us to go that don't just have to be that alleyway from that scene in Ghost in the Shell, which has really become iconic in a lot of creators' minds. But okay, I think we can move past it. We don't need the million Japanese signs thing anymore. I think we can move forward from that. And I'm a bit of a broken record, but I really do believe that Blade Runner was much more creative with using Art Deco, using shadow, and using powered down places that have no electricity, and using much more of a clockworky feel. It feels more futuristic. There's a reason. It's because neon and neon signs and light up signs are a fad in the overall trend of human development. Whereas Art Deco was much more deep and was the result of the whole Victorian era and the Baroque era and stuff. And it has a much more deep and like rich feel. And I think the future will be more deep and nuanced rather than being like, it's the 80s Pepsi logos. I don't think that's very far-sighted. So I hope that answers that question. That's a very complex question to answer. But hopefully a little bit of the design in Altered State that me and Alex are doing will give you some answers of what our sort of view of it might feel like. Are you still thinking of rolling rooms into V3 of Ice, or do you? Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you who don't know what Big Grump's talking about, I was going to do a book called Rooms. It's a compilation of encounter designs. It now got rolled into 3rd edition of Index Card RPG, and it's absolutely part of that. But just like ICRPG has always been focused on room designs and will continue to be. I mean, it's part of the bread and butter of why people enjoy the book, I think, is the room archetypes and designing encounters that are really designable, rather than kind of telling you a story and leaving it you to imagine how to get it to the table. Park is back. Is there a weapon besides Mac 10 that is quintessential? Well, the Mac 10 is the top, and it's got to have a suppressor on it. I guess, something like a PS90. So again, going back to Motoko from Ghost in the Shell, it's a front breaching weapon. So you hold it here, the clip is in the back like a bullpup, and then the whole breech opens on a hinge in the front, and it's got all the bullets on the top and stuff like that. And I think something like that is kind of quintessential. So if you guys keep an eye on Altered State as it begins to come out, you'll see we have some of that kind of stuff. And always, if you guys jump on Patreon for $1 a month, I do post art previews for all my work and stuff. So I don't mean to plug that a bunch. I know that's kind of annoying. What do we got here? Kimitsu desu. Oh no, it's Kimitsu desu. Kimitsu desu asks a question. Do you have any thoughts on Technolize, if you're familiar with it? I'm not familiar with it, but I'm very interested. Tell me more. Yeah, MP5s I think are kind of quintessential, but nowhere near like a PS90 type weapon. An MP5 is like a budget gun in the future. That's like an antique. But very cool in Spawn. Question. You said ICRPG was imagined as a 4-book system. We have Core, Worlds, Magic, and what's book 4? There is no book 4. I did imagine it as a 4-book system until I reached Magic, and then I realized that I was doing too many lists and I was going against my own principles. This is really tough truth to face as a publisher, that you set out on a journey to say, I don't want to make a maximal system that's all piling you with stuff, and then get revenue when you release things. Like, it puts you in a tough situation. You have to face your own standards or lose your authenticity. And I've chosen to face my standards and say, like, I don't need a ton more books. What I need is to answer all the playtesting data on the core of it. And that's really what I need to do. I mean, even 3rd edition is all of it in one book. So you have one book to carry in your backpack. You have one PDF to look at. Like, I think that is, although far less profitable, far more usable at the table, which has been the standard I put myself to. So I put myself in a real pickle with that one. Phil, I think this is a question. How do you get players to feel the loss of their humanity? Well, this is the qualia issue. So how do you get them to feel anything? It's a tough question. You keep things real enough where they get familiar. You pull away the familiar in thin enough layers that you boil the frog. You get them to where they're emotionally vulnerable without them noticing, so their defenses don't go up. You're almost hinting at what is the art of game mastering, and it's getting people to feel real emotion at the table. It's definitely the most elusive part of our hobby, but absolutely achievable. I'm not sure. Okay, there's one. Michael. Question. Are you releasing physical copies of your new books? I'm not sure which ones you mean. Yes? Well, Retune will be in physical as well as digital. And the new, 3rd edition, Altered State will be physical. Yeah. Yo, what up, Shaker? I hope Sea of Rust went well. JP got truckets. You don't want to maximal people asking for more stuff. You give them tools, make your own dang stuff. Yes, JP, that is actually the answer. It's just a tough answer when it's also a business. And it's tough to face. I mean, it's a tough-ass standard. I don't want to be a 30-book system. So it's a bit of a pickle, yeah. Park is back again. Yo, Hank, that original Magic character sheet with the circle is dope. Any chance of rehashing it with Polarity? You know, playing with that at the table was not fun. It looked so damn cool. You know, one of the reasons that the Magic book exists at all is because of that character sheet. Really cool concept, but it just goes to show that for me, the essence of this hobby is stuff that is actually usable and like is built on usability, is built on playtesting, and that thing playtested like garbage. So that thing might not come back. Oh, I made it to the end. No more questions. I've earned my salt for the night. Now I've got one more can after this and we're going to be done. But thank you all, 130 of you. Wait, 130 sustained. It's just like me driving across Canada. 130 sustained. Don't tell anybody I said that. I'll get a ticket after the fact. But anybody who has ridden a motorcycle across Saskatchewan knows exactly what I'm talking about. Michael Roop. The Roop. Question. For a Cyberpunk miniature game, besides Mr. Johnson request, the group needs an ambushed on the street. What are other ideas there are for Cyberpunk scenarios? Oh, dude. Well, you got to do a break-in. You got to do like a data steal. You've got to do a bad guy ambush in an apartment, but it's got to be a posh apartment with some kind of cool concept to it, like it's hanging on chains or some shit. You need something with a ton of glass, something cool with that, like maybe even a mirror sort of shenanigan thing. What else? Maybe an impossible hit, like John Wick style. That'd be dope. I think a super surprising reveal on a relatively simple operation would be really cool. Like, this is a great thing about Shadowrun, is when you're doing one of those corporate heists, you get into this penthouse apartment and there's a mother effing dragon sitting there, and like people don't even think these things are real anymore, and it's actually there, and it's like, holy shit, am I going to shoot this with an Uzi? So a big reveal type encounter, I think, is really cool in Cyberpunk. And then I think maybe you might go with the old clone trope. So fight one or more of your party in clone form, but they have like dark AI. So that kind of stuff. There's also like a chase through the city. If the chase mechanics from Call of Cthulhu are so damn good, so usable, and don't really worry about actual space. There's definitely like, the old sewer hunt. There's like a demolitions sort of encounter, which could be great, which is that there's, primacord or whatever, like wired up throughout this building, kind of like in Spectre, James Bond Spectre, and you have this building that's going to blow, and then you've got a series of rooms with this like spray painted like Joker type messages. I think they're really rampant. I think what you don't want is almost easier to answer, which is you come around a corner and there's some guys with pink mohawks and they shoot at you with Uzis. And I'm like, oh, well, fuck these guys. I guess I'll go around Southtown. There's a good noodle place over there anyway. We don't really need to mess with these guys. They're jerks. Or another great one, is the one from Akira where Tetsuo is lifting this huge storage thing out of the arena, just like this huge amount of destruction, so you get all this nice moving terrain. And you also have this supreme force, but then there's a little sub-battle going on, which in the case of Akira is kind of like Kaneda versus the terrain. But you could play that out with more characters, and there could be a lot of fun there. Alaskan Amber Ale. Do I have questions for you? I suppose, but that's really awkward to just be like, hey, 120 people, what do you think about Blurp? That makes me feel a little bit funny. There's already so much to try to read. It's an interesting one. Do you guys think that Cyberpunk has the sort of the sticking power with a good creative push on it to be as sticky as fantasy? I think that's the question that's on my mind currently. That is almost the primary question that I've been working on. Like, what do you guys think of that? Love to hear your answers on that. By the way, thank you. That's a very, very thoughtful question to throw up. That's some push-pull shit right there. That makes me feel good. Alpha, thank you for asking. And while those come up, let me just keep on reading. Park, are you getting to any games that are not involved with your creative IP? What would you love to play with a great DM? Good question. Definitely looking forward to Blacklight with Mark. A great deal. I think that's going to be absolutely killer. Um, I would like to play one of these microscope games. I don't know if anybody actually knows how to play it, but it sounds really cool. I would love to play that with someone who has skill. Um, and Blades, I think, would be really fun, but I need a GM that really can run it properly, and I think that could be fun and interesting. Same with Torchbearer. I would love to run that, but you got to have somebody that really understands it so that I can just be clueless and still have a good time. But no, generally, I don't have a lot of access to that stuff. That's why I'm going to go to a lot of cons next year. So see if I can get some of that table time with some of that stuff. Have you had much to do with Heavy Metal, the adult multi-artist illustrated fantasy mag? Have had much to do with it? Dear Lord, I'm a die-hard stack under the bed fan, baby. I love that stuff. All-time best. I'm crazy about Den. I'm crazy about Rexorx or whatever his name was. He was so cool. Oh my God. Anagrav, question. Since you brought up chase mechanics, who does it well? Nobody. Only Call of Cthulhu. Everyone else is clueless. No one ever even talks about it. It's so complex and fast. Most people do it by creating a simulation environment where you're on a treadmill, and so the world's going like this, and you're really just making static the battle. But Call of Cthulhu actually uses chase status, which I love. Absolutely genius. And I think you could actually do it better with thinking of it in terms of status, not space. Another method that we're using time as distance rather than distance. So really what's between you, and this is a very like race car mindset. You're not an amount of distance behind another car. You're an amount of time behind another car. And I think that's a very expansive concept to work on. Blurp is definitely better than Blarp. Everybody knows that. Blarp is like some Martian shit. Nobody says that. Spooky Cyberpunk, absolutely. What would make Cyberpunk mechanic-y wise? Speed. If you're still talking about chasing, super high speed, which I think is very hard to simulate in our hobby. And so I think there's a really unanswered challenge there. And if anybody knows a really good one, throw it up. Hey, Matt, thanks, dude. Always throwing down the beer money. Answer, fantasy's great because that's what the past might have been like. CP is great because that's what the future might be like. You might need to upgrade accordingly. That's a good point. It's easy to think about the past because it's fixed. It's hard to think about the future because what really is going to happen? I mean, electric scooters. Who saw that coming? Not me. Cyberpunk has a huge following, but existing books are too big. Amen. I didn't even talk about Shadowrun 5th and 6th editions. Man, those books are colossal. They're like a geography textbook. Dear Lord, I'm scared even picking the thing up. For me, as long as the story is compelling, yeah. Amen. Amen, Jesse. And I think that that's the mindset that can take Cyberpunk to a realm that's as cool as fantasy. If it's just about the people. About the people. For some reason, Cyberpunk, a lot of the writers seem so preoccupied with the status of the Earth. The Earth is not a player. Do you think Aeon Flux contributes? Oh my God, I love Aeon Flux so freaking much. It's so weird though. I think it's a little more sci-fi, but it has so many cool ideas for microtech. Oh, I love it. Freaking love that show. Oh, just even thinking about that makes me so excited. I love that freaky ass art style. It was so sick. Hey, good. We're chilling. Motorcycle moved 1,571 5-foot squares in a turn. No way. That's too funny. They've been around for a few editions, but just get the new 7th edition, Antigraph. That's what you want. That's where the goodies are. Oh yeah. Aeon Flux is freaking. Oh yeah, it's absolutely amazing. Oh, those electric scooters are so sweet. Not a fan of Shadow. Yeah. 6.2 is where it's at. What? Oh, 2E is where it's at. Yeah, I interpreted that as a decimal, but it was punctuation. Punctus exclamatus, as we say in Latin. Hank, the past is not fully fixed. Well, sure. We're always learning new elements. And honestly, this is one of the reasons I got out of archaeology is like, I found science to have a very dim imagination of the past that was bound by the available facts. And that's science for you. That's why I make a horrible scientist. Michael Hint. Did you know that the inventor of the Segway rode his off a cliff to his death? Yes, I did. Yep, that definitely happened. My favorite movie of all time? Whew. That's tough. Could be Conan the Barbarian. Could be Blade Runner. Could be Alien. One of those three. Sorry to give you three. That's like a super cheesy way to totally not answer someone's question. Your turn, Park. Throw yours up in your comment there. Cyberpunk as we see. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what I see a lot of, Cheeser, is like, yeah, well, exactly what you said. I don't need to repeat it. Johan, what's up, dude? Do you do fantasy art commissions? Yes, I do. And would you ever take a design test for an entire book? Yes, absolutely. For a project that's not your own? Yes, I would. These projects are exciting to me if I have a lot of creative freedom and I can completely own the artwork in the book. And I've done a few of these. They're really fun if I can own it. If I'm trying to match up to another artist or I'm getting like Google art to drive what I'm supposed to be designing, I lose interest very quickly and I don't want to do it. So if you're really serious about that, Johan, yes, I do large scale projects like that and I'm very proud of them. And I feel like I've been getting better and I've been getting more picky about what I'm doing. So there's a lot to do in the near future, so I don't have a ton of free time, but absolutely I set out to be an RPG artist on my own terms. And it's been more successful than I can manage so far. So I hope that continues. If you want to do it, please email me, hankering.burnail@gmail.com, because that's how I'm going to pay for my food. I need pizza like everybody else. If you could play one character in a movie, what would it be? Whew, man. I almost said Gimli, just like right off the top of my head. Just like, fuck it, Gimli. I'm Gimli. I would have made so many cool decisions as Gimli that Gimli as Gimli didn't make. I would have been more Gimli than Gimli was Gimli. I would have stayed on the horse for starters. I'm just saying. You know, my dice roll high, baby. So I guess Gimli is my answer. That's so dumb. If I could play a character in a movie, who would it be? It'd be Gimli. Fuck it. Conan the Blade Runner. That's right. I think here's a question that is, I'm seeing. Any opinion on what basics make a game feel cyberpunkish? Oh man, well, the things that we covered, you know, you do need the after urban landscape. You do need weapons. You do need cybernetics. You do need an adventurous feeling of freedom because the authority structure is broken down. That was a big part of my first video about cyberpunk. It's a critical part. You need that freedom, that wilderness of the world. And then I think you need some strangeness with what's happened because of digital life. I think digital life needs to have reached a point that it's odd. People need to be stored in hard drives, for example. That has to be. And I can't wait to get Retune out because of some of the odd little ideas that are in there about the sort of strange things that can happen. But you guys are going to have to wait another couple months. Sorry about that. It's been 9 sessions so far working on Retune, and I'm at 30,000 words. Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Ooh, good choice. Hoth Rebel. How punk should our cyberpunk settings be? 0. I would say almost 0. If you take a look at there's a great article about the fashion design for the second Blade Runner movie and the woman that did all that fashion design. And it's not punk. It's called art, and it's brilliant. And it does not just refer to a very brief movement from the 70s and 80s. It's its own thing. And I really don't think that taking like narrow plastic sunglasses and mohawks, which are completely a phenomenon of the 80s, and putting it into the year 2200 is interesting. I find that to be very derivative, and I think the punk part to me just needs to go away. I think noir is far more timeless and interesting than punk. Punk to me is just like, meh. There's, you know, like, or take a look at Akira, for example, one that I keep returning to. There are street gang kids in there. I think there's even maybe a kid with a mohawk There's the clown gang and there's some other stuff, but none of it's just blatantly like punk with studded belts and stuff. So I would say let go of it. Be creative and invent a future that is fashion forward in an interesting way. Control Blue. Now that's a cool username. Question: will you have a class, as in social class, layer on your game? Do you think it would be class with other elements? Well, there are classes in the game we're working on. Oh, I see what you mean. The issue of social class. Barely. I like to see much more freedom. So again, thinking about fantasy, I don't enjoy being told that I'm like lower class in a game. Or upper class, honestly, was almost a bigger insult. I like a world that's a wilderness, that's free, like fantasy tends to be, especially the fantasy that I like to run. And I want my Cyberpunk game to be the same. So yeah, you can have this mega elite, which are basically just villains. But I don't like the idea that like I don't have enough money to do something, or like I'm kind of... Screw that. That is not cool enough for me. It's not really a part of... I know I keep going back to some of these basics, but it's not part of Blade Runner. To me, it's not really part of Akira. There's far more strange and interesting action occurring than how many creds I have, or, you know, if I like can get into a club or something. Beep bop shiboo boop. I think I made it to the end again. Woohoo! This is the weirdest flavor. It tastes like squirt. Do I really want to be drinking squirt at my age in 2019? Okay, things are getting weird in here. I got to be careful. I'm going to say a bunch of stuff that'll make me take the video down. Actually, I don't have to critique anything anymore because these other great YouTube channels have already done it for me. Like ESPER's video is so dope. He just put away an entire genre of video for me. Yeah, I still think that the rebellion against the system and the freedom fighter and the wanderer, the big soul that can't be contained, absolutely is part of the genre, but not the pink mohawk studded belt, which was the question. And so even like if you take Luke Skywalker, he has a punk feel to him. He refuses to be contained. He's a free soul in a way, and I like that. That part is quintessential. Noir is a great example. The world is different and distorted, but the protagonist has... Yes, absolutely. Thank you for your participation, by the way, Jesse. Love your thoughtfulness that you're bringing to the thoughtfality of our thoughts. What happened to your caveman game? Hey, what happened to that old caveman game? You're talking about Blood and Snow. It's still available on Drive-Thru RPG. Big part of developing 3rd edition ICRPG was building that game. As far as what happened to the actual play sessions, well, they found a frickin' spaceship in a hot spring and took it off and changed all the timelines and got crazy. That was the beginning of last year. So remember I mentioned in January of every year I run several games that intertwine into a storyline, and that was a big part of it last year. It was called the Broken Sword Saga, and it was the story of these spaceships that are moving around changing time. But after watching Castle Rock on Hulu, I never want to run another multiple timeline game, because fuck that shit. Is RoboCop Cyberpunk? RoboCop is quintessential old school Cyberpunk, absolutely. But it's that crest of the wave kind of feeling. You know, like the cities weren't quite evolved enough. But I think RoboCop is interesting because it really directly addresses the prosthetics problem in a very deep way. Who are you? Are you your body? If your body is replaced, are you you? Can your memories be stored and then re-uploaded? And like these are very cyberpunky issues. I think the second movie, although it's hated by a lot of people, really delved into those issues a little more. But the first movie was just freaking hilarious and memorable. So yeah, hell yeah, it's cyberpunky, you know, like it's also freaking dope. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but like Ed 209 totally inspired me as a kid, like learning to draw. I loved that silly microphone head robot. It was super cool for its time. Did you try reading Blame manga? Oh my god, I love Blame, but no, I have not read the manga. I'm a faker, and I only read the movie or saw the movie. What is your favorite tag? Slayer. Very simple answer. Slayer's the best. Do ultimate against a foe you've already injured. It's my absolute favorite tag we've invented in ICRPG. I can't take credit for it because it was me and, the collaborators and players that I hang out with. I love that tag. I want all my characters to have that from now on. Shaker, is there an RPG story that you've been wanting to tell? Yes, and it's Retune. So stay tuned. So look, I got my little boop. Look at that cool cover, man. Cover art by Hanker Inferno. I think even though I'm just drinking stupid White Claws, I'm starting to feel a little bit funny. like the temptation to make bad decisions is just like this close. Like, oh man, I should put on my cyberpunk mask and run outside and go freak some people out. Warhammer 40K is definitely not cyberpunk. Absolutely not. It's way too big time. Castle Rock is wonderful. Yeah, I don't want to spoil it, but let's just say Stephen King's weakness remains Stephen King's weakness. He doesn't have many, but the ones he has are brutal. If you had stats in real life, what would be your highest stat? Con, by far. Con is my stat. And I've actually been confirmed by surgeons to have an extremely high con. I bleed extremely slowly. And I also process alcohol very quickly. Okay. But no joke. Yeah, very high con. Let's just leave it at that. I don't want to get all crazy with my answer. What is your favorite tag you've used or seen in the game? Oh, I did that one. Why is cyberpunk so much harder to define? I think someone earlier said it. It's like the future is hard to define. And I think more so because there's a nostalgia component that's really holding it back. And that's true of fantasy as well. But fantasy seems freer to come up with specific ideas. I think people are still too caught up in the nostalgia of cyberpunk. And it's like, here's my version of the exact same stuff. And you're like, ugh. Cyberpunk Casablanca. Would you say low fantasy is analog and high fantasy is digital? No. Low fantasy is struggle. High fantasy is heroism. How do you get into the ICRPG playtesting? Yeah, absolutely. Scott Von Rader. I'm sorry to just stick it to you this way, but the community that lives on Discord, which are my patrons, basically get the inside line on everything that I'm doing. So as 3E begins to evolve, I mean, that's where the front line is. And as a creator, that's just how I have to do it. Now, Patreon is cheaper. It's just $1 a month if you just want to be in on all the stuff. But Discord is the one thing that I reserve for the higher level patrons. And that's to keep the population down so we don't have thousands of people on Discord. I know that's a bit of like what people have critiqued is there's like a paywall. Yes, that's exactly what it is. But that is my playtest community. So there you have it. Yeah. I came here late. Hey, are you gonna? Yeah, Unicity. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. The whole identity problem in Retune, you're really gonna see it, and everything that's in Retune finds its way into altered states. So absolutely. Is there an at-table RPG story you want to tell? Yes, it's frickin' Retune. This is all I'm going to be running next year. So there you go. I'm just gonna put that out there. Maybe a little bit of Viking Death Squad if the patrons get interested. But okay, I lied. It's not a question. Read blame. So, would you consider digital entities using psychotronics in a game? Absolutely. In Retune, I have these things called pushers, which are psychics that also use the digital domain to move their influence around. Absolutely. Scanning. Question. Major trend seems to be people moving away from having kids. How do you think that impacts a cyberpunk world? Not interested as far as an RPG creator. As far as a human being with interest in sociology, yeah, that's somewhat intriguing, but I'm not sure where you're seeing that people are having less kids. I don't know if you've been outside recently. Little things are everywhere. Like, seriously, I don't know what country they're having less kids in. I know that's happening in Japan a little bit, maybe like in Finland or something, but Around here, they're just breeding like rats. I'm sorry to everyone enjoying child rearing. Like, rock on. Thank you for rescuing our species from annihilation. But yeah, they're breeding like rats. Hey, do you think Cyberpunk is better served telling more intimate street level stories as Nathan Palmer, that's a good question, but only if like deep mysteries are being exposed. And once again, I got to go back to Blade Runner and Akira. They're both street level. The number of characters is very, very low in those stories, but the revelations and the issues being confronted are massive. Another great example of this that has nothing to do with Cyberpunk is The Shining. The Shining is questioning huge cosmic truths and psychological terror and what it means for us as human beings with very few people. And I think that's the magic that you want to hit in any good story of any genre. Make it personal, but ask huge questions and find the riptide between those two. Yeah, as far as int and whiz, I think they're overrated stats. I think that is a desire to escape one's humility, and I don't have that desire. I just want to survive. That's why I like Khan. I just want to make it to see what's next. That's where I'm at as a person. Viking does yes, scanning. Children of Men, I thought was a very one-note film. I felt they had a really hard time finding the movements in the movie. Like, okay, where's this going? It was just sort of like watching someone sit in a bar and cry. Like, there's not a lot of movement to what happens to those characters. So they did struggle, but they kind of, I don't know. That was tough. That was a tough one. That topic may be beyond the scope of this stream. Question, what's your favorite dice? I.e., how many sided? Ooh, probably 12. 12 or 4. They're the coolest. Yep. Question, given that super intelligent being in a cyberpunk story would probably see more of reality than normal people, just like in Neuromancer, would it bring you closer to cosmic horror? Fuck yes. I loved that in the new, what was the one with Orlando Bloom, where they're in the sort of Victorian fantasy city? Carnival Row. They did a great job in that one of giving the sort of dark god ominousness a real sort of humanity, and it was dope. I wouldn't want to go far as Dark City, which is one of the creepiest animes ever. That's too much craziness. But I would love the idea of a Neuromancer-style AI getting into some dark god type tentacle-y stuff. Great combo, peanut butter and jelly, hell yeah. But then the characters or the players might not see that coming, and that could be a wonderful reveal. Just like the dragon in the penthouse. It'd be like Azathoth in the penthouse. I don't Intelligence level going down. Alcohol level going up. J. Scott Garibay. Hey, Nicholas, thanks for the tip. I owe you one. Meat and mead monies. Delicious meat. J. Scott Garibay. Now that's a fine name, old sport. Are you into sailing? Anyway, sorry. Did you read any of Gibson's post-cyberpunk work? Nope. It all sounds totally amazing. It's just I haven't gotten to it yet. You know what? If you want to convince me to read a book, post it on my Twitter feed because I read whatever someone suggests me on Twitter. So when I'm done with Kings of the Wild, which I'm almost done. Oops, this book right here. I'm almost done. When that's over, then I'm going to ask on Twitter what I should read next, and I will almost always read the first thing that comes up. I know that's kind of like a mini game, but hey, there it is. Question, I love the style of cards for Xeno Dead Zone. Thank you, Sergio. Appreciate that. Do you have a similar version for fantasy games? Not quite, no. Xeno Dead Zone, I was living in a cabin for 8 days, and I did all of that art in the span of 8 days because I was cloistered away in a cabin. So I need to get cloistered away again to do something of that scale. That was not an easy art project. I'm not sure if you realize the scale of the carpal tunnel that was imposed upon me doing that art, but I appreciate the comment. We're going to try to get to that point. Best in-session moment you've ever had. Oof. That's tough. That's too hard to choose. There's been so many that are so insanely epic. and some of them are on YouTube. Um, I don't know. That's too hard. There was a moment where two of my players realized that their characters were falling in love about 4 years ago. And one of them was turning it into an insect, and it was like a tragic love moment. And neither of them had any interest in each other in that way, but their characters did, and it was really awkward and beautiful. And like, talk about getting real emotion into your players at your table. As a GM, that was huge for me. Um, Question: what's going on with Frog Boy? You know what? I wrote all of Frog Boy, and I did about a third of the art, and I started asking myself, what the hell am I doing? Why am I doing this? I'm not sure I see why to finish that, because it's no small amount of work. I mean, it's a beautiful gag that everybody thinks is funny, but I'm not sure I'm in the business of creating that kind of material. I can show more of it on Facebook here in the next few days. I'll do that, and you can tell me what you think, Nicholas. Oh, Cheeser McGee's back once again. What would you do dungeon crawl look like in Cyberpunk? Oh man, that's easy. Any set of hallways where security has locked your exits. Any tunnels under the city. Any sublayers under sublayers under sublayers in a giant city where you're moving through ruined spaces of any kind. Any kind of complex. Any kind of flying or hovering installation of any kind. Everything in Cyberpunk, except like the street open world stuff, is still a dungeon crawl. This is all part of making sure that Cyberpunk is fantasy, is as good as fantasy. You got to follow that old trap theory stuff. You got to lure them in, contain them, and then spring all the deadliness on them. It's the same stuff. So, yes, the genre leads to some different playstyles, like the heist mindset, stuff with bikes or even with vehicles of different kinds. Yes, there's different stuff. There can be verticality, which can be challenging to GM. But already in our playtests with Alex, with the Altered State group, we're finding that a lot of the fundamental popcorn stuff still works. Watch the anime Hide and Go Seek. Never seen that. Rhythm and music. Only as background data. I'm not sure what you mean by that. My skull feels funny. Did you get new glasses? Yes. Well, it was a while ago. It was like 3-4 months ago. But yeah, I went full librarian on these ones. Question: Japan has an oversized position in Cyberpunk. Oh, yes. J. Scott Garibay, I don't think that those countries have the sort of bleeding edge sensation of technology that makes them conducive to Cyberpunk, but I don't think that puts them out of the running. I think you'd have to choose some place like Sao Paulo, perhaps, or even like New Delhi could maybe be interesting. But to be honest, I think ending it to some of the countries you mentioned has the same flavor. I don't think it's easy for most people to visualize Zimbabwe. And I don't think it's particularly pleasant for some people to visualize something like Israel. Like there's a lot of real world tenderness there. So I think it's tough. I think Japan is in a good spot to be a part of this fantasy. Also, you have Ghost in the Shell and you have Akira just beating you down, being this super badass vision of kind of what we're fantasizing about. So they find their way in. I mean, even Retune has a lot of Japanese influence in it. I think it's kind of part of the interesting idea is that in the future, Japan becomes the dominant culture. And with all of its flaws as well, not just, like yay Japan, it comes with darkness as well. I think there's something very interesting there that just happens to be part of the genre as we know it. But putting it in these other places is absolutely interesting. I think it's just challenging. Oh, what's up, Photo Viper? Hey, man. Blade Runner has a comic book called Blade Runner 3019. Okay, cool. Park Shields. Now we're really getting into some personal business here. Yes, Park knows that I posted a little bit, maybe on Facebook and on Twitter, that Samhain this year was extremely weird. I don't have a particularly detailed explanation. I can only say that, I am a believer that the sort of veil between the worlds thins greatly at Halloween, at Samhain. and that it is a time of transition from life to death in a way. You go from the time of abundance to the time of, when the bones of the earth show. And I think, when the weak perish is a little bit how the ancient world saw winter, I think. But this year, Halloween night in particular was extremely strange. It was sort of scary. I was alone for a big part of the night because of work with my significant other. And it was very odd. There was an extremely weird feeling in the air. I can't really put my finger on it. And then when I went to, pick up, give a ride and whatnot, and just driving felt weird. And I felt like I was sort of seeing sort of weird, kind of my headlights were bouncing off of trees in the mist in different ways that was not comfortable for me. It was a very, very strange night. Also, I don't know if this is TMI or anything, but there is a haunted bar that's part of my daily life. It's one of the most haunted places in America. I can't provide any more information than that, but going there on Halloween night is a bit strange. It's just a sort of strange, I really can't put a direct pin on it. Like last year was kind of just, like having a fire in the backyard, which is what you do for Samhain. This year was just, I don't know, weird. I'm just glad it's over, to be honest. Having been to Tokyo, yeah, big city. I've never been in a city so big. Yeah, that's cool, man. That's real cool. That's how I felt about old Barcelona. How do you feel about different languages in the setting? It's really cool as far as like authenticity, but I can't deal. I don't have time in my movie for it. Like it's like in Blade Runner, they give a brief mention to this gutter talk that's part Chinese, part Spanish, part English and everything, but you don't actually have to deal with it much. And I'm about there too. I just don't think it's that interesting to me. Unless you had a very specific encounter that was designed around trying to understand someone speaking some kind of weird language or foreign language. Moving all the way back down to Johan. Would there be room for mutant or alien species? Or does that make it sci-fi? Mutants, I think, quite easily. But I don't think getting into sci-fi is going to ruin your fun. I mean, yeah, if you bring an alien in, you got to watch out, because that implies like, whoa, UFOs and like beams from space and like, fourth kind stuff. I don't know, abduction. And then you're acknowledging it, and that gets a little crazy. But I think with class and with style, it would be a huge and amazing revelation to bring into an adventure. I mean, fuck yeah. Be ye not afraid of science fiction, ye cyberpunk creator. Just be ye careful. Why did I have to speak in that silly language? Burn some incense and get them spirits out. Yeah. I mean, of course, we have all that kind of stuff in our lives, but I'm just saying, Park asked, it was freaking weird. Arrows, yes, that's true, but no, this one is different. This is serious kind of, this is gnarly stuff. And I was a complete disbeliever at the beginning, and I am no longer I would rather not talk about that, to be honest. Fug gnarly. Now that's a username you can really earn your money on. Question: can something be both sci-fi and cyberpunk? Abso-freaking-lutely. Why not? What's the Tannhauser Gate? I don't know. Like, what are all those things that Roy talks about in Blade Runner? They sound like things from Battlestar Galactica. What is all that stuff? What's, like they mention all this off-world stuff that's very sci-fi. It's just, you don't get to be a part of it. You don't get to go to the cool new planet with Matt Damon. If you do go to the new planet with Matt Damon, then you're in Mass Effect. So, it's just a flappity. Well, this grows empty, and this grows full, meaning my bladder and my stomach. Making con rolls all night long. Anyway, I can't believe there's still 113 crazy knuckleheads still kicking around. It's after 9 now. 2 hours on the clock. Hank, an alien conspiracy is perpetrated by a corporation. Yeah, I would also be careful with the corporate stuff. Like, I think it's a little bit of a dead end. Like, being angry at and blaming corporations for things is kind of neat on the surface. It gets old really quickly. So I noticed some of the books we went through earlier really get into the corporation thing, and I think it's dicey. But you do need at least one cool one, like Tyrell. Tyrell's perfect. You just get one to focus on. Bug Hunt, absolutely. Cyberpunk Bug Hunt is brilliant. Almost 10:30 here for old Cheeser McGee. Slopping down to the bottom of that third can. My IQ is just taking a dive. I'm well past Ballmer's peak at this point. OCP owns the cops. OCP owns the cops. So yeah, you guys, thanks a lot for tuning in. Whoo-wee, that was a big session. We stone cold kicked it. So what are the next stops here? Playing Odium in Chuck's game in a week. And then in 2 weeks, I believe, playing Blacklight with Mark. That I'm super excited about. That's going to be cool. Our first Alter State session is Thursday, so that's going to be dope. We're going to finally get that underway. Oh, Errol. Hey, what's up, man? Pachico. I like that last name. Howdy doody to the Philippines. Hey, have a great night to you, Hall of Craft. Welcome to the Hall of Craft. Give me your popsicle stick of entry. Popsicle. Yeah, thank you guys all for tuning in, and ladies, thank you so much. Sentient beings everywhere. Love and respect. That was we had a lot of folks hanging out for the stream. Good times. Glad to talk about Cyberpunk all night long. And for the people who are going to be watching this on archive, they're going to be like, why is this 2 hours long? This guy, these terrible videos. But you know, I just don't care sometimes. I'd rather just get on YouTube, interact with you guys, and have a good time than, like, you know, put a bunch of work into an edited thing and cut out all my ums and my ifs and make myself funnier than I actually am. I can't. I just can't. So I'd rather just show up than do all that. Thanks, you guys, for tuning in. Keep an eye on everything. It's all coming down the pipeline. And for all you guys already on Patreon, thank you so much for making all this craziness possible. Strength, honor, and beer. I'm going to be right here. This old Ingrid Bernal signing off. See you guys next time, as whatever next time may be. Until then, keep it real. Don't steal. You always get a deal. I'm out. Peace.